What did Keffals and Pollypeople debate? Was it the Finster stuff? I think they were debating whether or not men can cross-dress. It was that kind of thing. I'm not familiar with the name Finster. What happened there? All I know is the conversation was a shit show. Alright. Well, we're a bit early, so while we wait. Let's get the audio up a little bit here. While we wait for people to come in, I can take a couple call-ins even. If anybody had any comments and they're in the server and they wanted to chat briefly, be my guest. Now is the time. See if anybody is there. Not yet, but there will be. I'm certain of it. So we have two things on the itinerary tonight, and I'll recapitulate those in a few minutes. Ooh, boy. Hey! Stop it. Oh my god. Okay. What are you looking at? Oh my god. Take that. Two things on the itinerary tonight. We're going to be looking at the Keffals and Pollypeople debate, obviously. And then we're going to be taking, at the end of it, we're going to have a short peruse of Short Fat Otaku's political content over the last year. And there's a reason for this. I tasted blood when I responded to that hearing both sides video. This is somebody who really, really wants to weigh into... oh, what's this? Big boy. Who really wants to lean into the political theory side of things to most dishonorable ends, and he is very bad at it. I am not. Smo. This is just a reskinned Smo. With boomsticks. Oh boy. And now he is poisoned. Haha! Where is your god now? Whoa. There he is. Blah, 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 blah. Haha! Prelate's Inferno Crozier. That'll be, like one of these? Oh, is that a weapon? Is that actually his weapon? Oh, look at that. Hmm. Damn. Well, that's cool. I'm never going to use that, but that's cool. Praise the door. Is that the wind, or is that tree moving by itself? I guess it's just the wind? Okay, I was certain there's like a weird monster or something. Oh, have I been here before? Weird. I don't think I've been here before. There's a bunch of items here that indicate that I haven't been here before, yet there's an open chest there. Huh. Fire scorpion charm. They'll never find me. Also, oh, you're very dead. Bad news for you, buddy. That is lava. Why is there lava? Oh, have I found the way to Volcano Manor? I was looking for that. I guess if I go downstairs, should hypothetically be a way. The guy there stole the item out of the chest. Ah, I see. A crozier is a crooked staff. That's not a crooked staff, though. It's clearly a hammer. I think I confused it for, what's it called? Not a rosary, but, something else. Check Discord? Alright. What is it this time, Leo? Oh, it's just you. Okay. Hey, how you doing?
Hello, hello.
What's up?
Just remember for my volume, if you need to turn me up, it'll be on your end.
Seems relatively okay so far.
Okay. Not much is up. I didn't actually catch how the rest of the vegan thing went after I vanished. Is there like that video's still up, right?
Mm-hmm. And the segments are timed to be
Okay,
uploaded one after the other for the next couple of days.
okay. Did that you said at the start that that you didn't think it was going to convince you to become a vegan? Did you end up getting convinced or no?
I did not. But, I mean, it's not
Okay,
exactly...
gotcha.
What the hell is that? Oh, I hate those things. But, I mean, it's not exactly fair to put that on people over the span of a couple hours conversation.
No, sure.
To do that, yeah.
Oh no! Oh yeah, of course. It's not. Of course, it's not reasonable that like first of all that anyone would be able to convince almost anyone else in a single conversation, or that anyone else would be convinced by anyone else in a single conversation. So I'm not like putting that expectation there. I was just curious. Who would you say was the most convincing out of everyone that you talked to?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't find any of them that convincing. Although
Which one do you think had the strongest argument?
Andre, honestly.
Okay.
Mostly
And what was
because
Andre's argument?
I can't even remember. I just remember that the conversation went into places
Oh,
where we were specifically considering
okay.
like actually compelling points of empathy with non-human animals, and that was, at the very least, that was in the ballpark of something that would have some kind of emotive force. The
Right.
the emphasis on name the trait, I don't think it was applicable in that context. I think too much effort was spent trying to brute force it into. I don't want to say seeming applicable because that sounds like they're being deliberately deceptive, and I
Okay.
don't think they were. But I don't know. I didn't think that the emphasis on name the trait was rhetorically a good idea.
Do you mind if I try and argue you? I mean, not that I'm going to convince you here. I'm just wondering if you mind if I like argue you a little bit about veganism.
Very briefly, and then we're gonna start on the Keffals thing. But if you
Okay.
had something in
Oh
particular you'd
yeah,
like to
sure. Oh
broach,
yeah.
oh,
Oh sure. Kick me off as soon as you need to. No worries about that at all. I was wondering. Okay, so to that pollution argument I was making, I
yeah,
wanted to sort of bring that up. Um, okay, so like in the case, so I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of like an environmental argument for it.
uh-huh.
Like, do you think? Let me think about this. Okay, so you basically don't think that there's a connection between the environmental consequences of the industry that produces animal products for consumption and your consumption of animal products through their purchase in the market, right?
I think a connection can be drawn. I think in order for your interference as an individual for that to be efficacious, you need more than just the bare fact of being a part of the pool that contributes to that industry's buying decisions, right?
Well, what do you mean by efficacious?
What I mean by efficacious is that your removal of yourself from that pool of people contributing to the buying of that stuff isn't such that it disappears into the normal what's the word, the there's a technical word for this, but just the morass of every little bit of incidental waste, uh, just some kind of like incidental like loss of product or whatever, like that kind of thing.
Well, the way I see it, it's like imagine you and everyone else in the world who's eating or
Hmm.
consuming animal products that have like environmental impacts. Imagine you're all just like standing on like one really long cliff edge and throwing a series of plastic like items and objects and bottles just off the edge into the ocean, and each one of you is just constantly lobbing it. The more and more you purchase stuff, um, like when
No,
you
no, no.
when you
I understand.
visualize
No, no, no. I understand that
visualize a
concept.
series of events in
No,
that
listen,
way.
listen. I know. I understand
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay, but again, like
yeah,
I'm taking account of that. Like I understand the principle that hey, if you're
yeah.
contributing, then at some level down the line, we can treat your contribution as if that's the one that pushes us over the edge, because who's to say which one it is, and they're all cumulative anyways. The
Well,
problem is,
not only that,
like,
but well,
look.
yes, also,
Yeah, but the problem is,
yeah. Go ahead.
you could go into a McDonald's tomorrow and just Thanos snap one burger eater who goes there every single day from existence, and McDonald's would not register a thing. It would not count. That would not
Yeah,
become a numerical
but
value. So it would not
do
impact
you
their
think you
decision.
can?
Not at sufficient
Oh wait,
scale and
wait.
not
That's right.
sufficiently
So
quickly enough for it to make a difference before the
did,
world ends. So
didn't you broach a subject where you like? Do you believe that? Um, okay, hold on. But let me think about this.
sure.
I, I mean, it's like you stopping the activity is a necessary condition for the entire activity to cease. It's not a sufficient condition, but it's a necessary condition. Um, I don't know. I don't see why that's not like I mean I'm just thinking about like any social thing that you want to accomplish involves
Okay, sure, but look,
justification to
look,
some
look. It's
degree.
it's a necessary condition of getting a haircut that you cut your hair. Okay? It
Uh-huh.
is it is
Uh-huh.
it is it is not doing anything more than making a token gesture to on a day by day basis pluck a single hair with a pair of tweezers from your scalp. That will not result in an appreciable loss of hair for most people, I imagine.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So like you're right. Yeah,
Well, okay.
it is a condition of an activity 100% ceasing that 100% of participants stop participating in it. But that by itself isn't an argument for, hey, there's a practical reason why you in particular, in the absence of other people going in concert with you at great scale, from doing X, Y, or Z. When the only reason is the result, because that is specifically what you're invoking here, is the final result of unplugging yourself from meat consumption. I think the stronger argument in that case would be something to the effect of like,
Well, it's just that I'm thinking about like this must generalize across quite a lot of different social phenomena that are bad for society. Where it's like, just because another
sure,
person would do it, even if
yeah.
you didn't, therefore it's like okay for you to do it. I mean,
Well, it's not so much therefore it's okay for you to do it. I am not aware of any cosmic scorekeeper who is actually declaring to all parties that it is not okay for them to do it. That is another thing that has yet to be established. Like, we don't have agreement on that. It's not clear to me.
well,
It's not clear to me that
yeah.
there's some principle in the universe that says it is wrong for you to consume other animals. In fact,
No, I'm not invoking such a principle either.
no, you're not.
I'm
But
invoking
well,
with
you
reference
sort
to
of you
the
sort of
end.
are by implication though when you treat as the default that that we're in a situation where we need permission. We don't. We just don't. Like there's not a thing we are beholden to ask permission of in order to consume
No, I
it.
mean we're well, no, I agree with that. We are beholden to our ends. We have different ends. One of
Are
our
we?
ends is meat eating. One of them is surviving the climate crisis. These are
I set my own ends. I'm not beholden to them. My ends are in a sense beholden to me.
well, yes, yes. My discourse is assuming that we share the end and that it's such an obvious shared end
Hmm.
that we're not even going to question that it's a shared end, which is that we both want the climate crisis to be dealt with, and the environmental crisis to be dealt with in general. I'm not saying that it would apply
Well,
to one
that's a
person.
want, right? Like the end will be different. I could uh, like what I'm doing right now does not have the end of the a solution to the climate crisis, which at this point probably doesn't really admit of a solution per se. What I'm doing right now does not admit of a solution to the climate crisis. What I'm doing right now is practically unrelated to it in almost every conceivable way. When we're arguing about veganism, it's not clear to me that because again,
No, because no.
go
Not
on.
it's not every conceivable way because you do have look. If society were to transform, you would
Sure.
end up behave. So okay, what I'm asking you to do is to think, okay, how would I behave under these conditions in which I'm saying things need to be like society has to change? How would I behave in such conditions? And then you do that and you embody it, and everybody else sees that, and that is a form of propagating the behavior. That's one thing. First of all, second of all,
If it propagates, yeah.
if it propagates, yes. If you're an effective, but you don't know whether you're going to be effective or not until you try. That's first. That's the first thing. So you'd actually have to like try being veganism and convincing other people to be vegan and like seeing how it goes before you can like
Well, that's not
before you
really
can sort of make the argument
that's not really
behind
an argument for
what
being
you're saying.
vegan though, because I could be equally efficacious just by telling people I'm vegan and lying.
Well, okay. So if that's your position, that's interesting, and I'm not necessarily going to oppose that either. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's whatever. Like fine. Um, I would say that lying itself and the hypocrisy involved in doing that would be bad for you in like a general way, and therefore you shouldn't do that either.
Oh, so I'm
But
sure people have made quite a bit of money doing that.
that doesn't mean that it's not bad for their character and like for like their
What does it mean
general
for something to be
integrity
bad
and
for someone's character?
it means that the ends that they actually care for the most, that I assume that they care for the most, based on like a general idea that I have about people in general, um, uh, but based on those ends, I know that them becoming a person who lacks integrity will not suit their like most desired end, based off how I understand people. Um,
Maybe it simply reveals what their most desired end actually is, and they're completely conforming to that.
uh,
Maybe the end they
I don't
want
think so. I think
isn't the salvation of the human species. Maybe the end they want
oh
is
sure, yeah.
to be comfortable and have prestige and gusto in this life for themselves, and that's it. Maybe they even get some kind of satisfaction about pulling the wool over everyone else's eyes in the
I'm not
process of doing
saying,
so.
but yeah, but they can also be mistaken about what they would actually like enjoy the most or want the most, right? So they can want something like that, but it doesn't mean that it's what they would want the most if they actually had experienced it or if they had knowledge of it. That is something that they could sort of bring to mind as an actual end.
Um, I I guess, but I mean, now you're trying to sell me on the idea that you know what people want more than they do, and I don't know.
Only, well, no, not necessarily more than they do, although it's possible, but only in a very general way, not in a way that um, would like conform them to a rigid course of action or something like that.
I don't know.
It's just
I think assuming people
there are
want the
certain.
best for
Let me
themselves
give
in
you an
some kind
example.
of analytic sense
Like,
is a stretch.
um, I'm not saying that they. Well, no, I mean, well, you're. I don't think I've said that.
Okay.
That would imply that people actively know what they want. That would imply that they actively know what's best for themselves and they want it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they can not know what's best for themselves, or not that knowledge of that is impossible, but they don't necessarily know what's best for themselves. And so when you say that they want something in a given moment, that doesn't imply that what they want is necessarily something that should be facilitated. Um, yeah, basically, there's a large range of things that we should be like willing to facilitate that doesn't necessarily have an obvious like social end or purpose or anything like that, just for the sake of the individual. But I'm just saying, yeah. Anyway,
Oh my god. Sorry, this guy's hard hitter. Um. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. It seems to me. I mean, moreover, this isn't really much in the way of an ethical argument, is it? You're saying that we have some
I
practical
don't
end in
understand.
common. Well, you're saying that we have some practical end in
I don't
common.
really. I don't distinguish between practical and ethical. So
Well, you probably should, because a lot of unethical actions or actions you would want to rate as unethical are rated as such on practical grounds. Like there has to be a distinction. Otherwise, literally everything that you can imagine a practical purpose to now suddenly becomes ethically valid, which is I don't know. Like you can do that if you want, but it
becomes
seems
what?
like it becomes ethically
It
valid.
becomes
It becomes ethical.
ethically. It becomes potential. It becomes potentially ethically
Well,
valid.
where are you getting the potentially from? Where are we now adding caveats? You just said you don't distinguish between the two.
So no. So okay. Let me.
Sure,
Yeah. Yeah. No. I get what you're saying.
it's all
There
good.
is actually a distinction that can arise, but the two concepts are almost identical, um, if not identical. I mean, I'm not sure if I wouldn't just identify them. I mean, the practical is more like a component of the moral, is what I would say. But um, okay, anyway, moral arises
I mean, it
when
could be
like
if you're
activity.
making a deontological case, it's actually going to be kind of the opposite. It's going to be the
No, I'm
distinctly
not. I'm not making it deontological.
yeah.
I'm not making it deontological. I'm making it consequential. Um, I was going to say that the moral arises in relation to an end. So it's whenever activity arises in relation to an end, or when you're considering an end, how best to reach it, basically, between different like courses of action, in between different ends that you can reach through courses of action. Um, these are all forms of what I would call moral deliberation, and they apply. Uh, they can apply potentially. Well, specifically, they apply to what would sort of satisfy us best, and they apply in terms of better or worse. So anything that can potentially be judged in terms of better or worse it is therefore potentially possible to be judged in a moral sense because a moral judgment is that better or worse in terms of reaching an end.
Shit! Oh shit!
So
Oh shit! Oh shit! Ah, oh, damn it! Okay,
with that in
so
mind,
close. Yeah.
to say that veganism is a means to preserving the environment um, is to make a moral argument, in my view. That is, I mean, it's a practical argument according to how you view practical. But I'm just saying I don't really see much distinction because the whole point is it's towards the end of preserving the environment, and the moral arises when activity arises in relation to an end. A conscious end.
I don't know. I don't find that very compelling, but we can hash that out later. I'm sure everybody's wondering why the hell we're talking about veganism. We're supposed to be watching Keffals versus Pollypeople.
Oh yeah, I can. If you want me to.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Who do we have here? Happy to talk about. Who's Stephanie Helms? And this nonsense now? Yeah, running the nonsense now, guys. We're getting rid of no. Leo is actually a fantastically integral person to making stuff run here. Let me pull that down. Boom. Boom. Okay. We're going to get into the Keffals stuff now. We'll resume this at some other point, Leo. And I think I'm almost certainly going to have Andre on again, too, so you'll have more chances to talk with those people as well.
And by the way, just so you know, there's another person waiting in stream guests, Sidra. Just so you know.
Who?
Sidra.
Who's Sidra?
Yeah.
Oh, her. Yeah, I'm gonna take any more guests today. We're gonna go forward. Maybe okay, I'll tell you what, Sidra, if you're waiting, maybe between this segment and the next one, I'll have you on to chat. But we're gonna get into the Keffal stuff now. So, all right, see you, Leo.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime. All right. The nightmare can begin. So I have not seen any of this, so I don't know what to expect, except that I should expect the worst. I'm out of coffee. Alas. Let's get into it. Here we have Pollypeople, who has just been the absolute worst lately, for God knows what reason. I don't know why. It makes no sense. By the end of the debate, President Sunday can, should, and must become a femboy. I don't think that's within my toolkit. Alright, let's begin. Let me know if the audio is good, guys.
I guess people are wondering exactly what harm is being done. I'm sure in public, Finn gets as many weird stares as any trans person. Not to say his experiences are in any way.
Okay, it looks like it is the Finn thing. Can somebody give me a link to some explanation of what the Finn thing is? What the hell's going on here? Or if anybody wants to explain this very quickly. Or Sidra, if you were by chance coming on to talk about that. Let's pull him in quickly, just in case. Just in case. Hey, Sidra, how are you doing? Hello, hello? Can you hear me? You're still muted, if you're trying to speak. Hello? Going once, going twice. Alright, we'll try again in between segments.
Whoa.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. It's just, I didn't expect that you'd
Oh, it's you, the boating one.
me up.
How are you?
Yeah, it's me, the boating one. Yes, I'm well. How are you?
Tired. Very tired. I'm just about to get into the Keffals versus Pollypeople debate. Was there something on your mind quickly?
Well, I'm here for that. That's I caught the thing, and I didn't know, but what you might want to have an older trans person's perspective on the whole thing, which I find it's just God, not this shit again.
Yeah, God.
Because it all revolves around it all revolves.
You're cutting off a little bit there.
It revolves around Finster.
Okay. I'll tell you what. I'm going to go through this quickly myself, but I will be streaming again tomorrow night. So if you wanted to come on and comment, then that's probably going to be the ideal time. It's super late for me, and I don't know how long I can do this for.
No, it's super late for me too. But please carry on. I think it's good that you're getting to it, but boy, it's enough. Enough's enough.
That's what I hear. Yeah. All right. Well.
All right.
Okay. We'll resume later. Take care. You have a good night.
All right. Cheers. You too.
All right. I just need to find out quickly what the Finistra is. The Finistra thing is. Finistra drama. You want a TLDR? Are you offering a TLDR? That'd be useful. DM talked about it a tiny bit. Was a really segment. I'm sure we'll get the deets as this goes forward. It's gonna just be a case example anyways. They're gonna be debating the particulars, so let's just jump into this, so we're not wasting any more time. So, Keffals versus Pollypeople. Apparently, it's a disaster. Let's go.
Similar, but he doesn't like rally against trans people. I hope that's not a straw man point. That is a straw man point. Like when you sort of lean into the, I mean, here we go. I'll pull it up. I'll pull this shit up. When you rely heavily on ideas like, look, I fooled you, I'm a man, you're gay now, sort of stuff. That is, that's saying, oh, hold on a second, hold on. Let's talk to Keffals. Friend of the stream, Keffals.
Not for long.
All right.
Judging from what I've heard.
Okay.
Oh.
Hello. Thank you for reaching out to me. Let me get this open here. Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. I believe this is the first time we've chatted, and so, you know, thank you for considering chatting with me.
Oh, I figured you deserved at least a conversation on it. This topic seems to really upset you.
Oh, I would say that, well, okay, here's the most upsetting thing about it, is not necessarily the topic itself. Well, you know, the topic itself is upsetting enough. It's the sort of the well poisoning, the sort of, you know, straw manning and dismissing of the very real critiques, I think.
Okay, so Pippa says Finster is a boy streamer who dresses as a girl. Sometimes he's a bit homophobic, misogynistic, etc., but only a little bit. Okay. It's not his thing. He's more of an ally than a problem. Finn is cis, but he does cross-dress sometimes and has a lot of trans followers. The TS versus CD wars seems so futile. There's never gonna... Okay. Alright.
Think of Finn's content that have made it difficult. Like, you know, I've sort of resigned myself to people sort of responding to me saying, you're just jealous, Polly, or you're, or now you're trying to, control what people wear. You're basically a TERF. So, you know, like that's been, you know, and it's come from trans people. And I know, I have to guess that that's been the results of some of the, you know, not just you, but other content creators sort of not taking the critique seriously and being dismissive of them.
So what's the critique,
well,
in your opinion? Yeah,
okay. So if I could sort of briefly describe it, when you create content and you lean heavily into tropes such as like, I'm a trap, you know, like if you've built your entire existence on the, hey, I'm actually a man, lol, but I look just like a woman, and I've, you know, you're gay because you like me, or I've fooled you, and your entire presentation is, you know, on the surface, completely indistinguishable from a trans woman's experience. I mean, I thought he was a trans woman. That's why I sort of let it slide, right? Because, you know, I'm a trans woman too.
Like
Hold on.
Like if you did, okay, why would I hold on? Like,
like
already.
Well, I thought you wanted to hear me out.
I am, but like immediately you're already saying you weren't even familiar with who Finn was or Finn's content before jumping to that conclusion.
Well, no, because I've familiarized myself with it. Like I'm not just popping off here. What I'm trying to describe to you is I can understand why people might not quite pick up what I'm putting down here, because you sort of look at the content at first glance, you're like, this is just a trans woman being trans, right, being edgy, but when you look deeper into it and you become more familiar with his history, you know his entire platform is built off of transphobic shit. And so that is, you could tell me I'm.
How is Finn's entire platform built on transphobia?
Well, his entire thing is trap content, like fooling people into saying, "Look, you're gay for liking me. I'm actually a woman. Lol, I fooled you," sort of stuff. Like, how does the trans community not take strays from that? And how is it okay for him to lean into those kind of tropes when he doesn't pay the price for it?
I mean, objectively, as someone who identifies as a cis man, if a straight man thinks that they're attracted to Finn, they're gay.
Do you understand that just saying it like that in such a bald sort of way in isolation? Don't you see that why that enables transphobes to say that we're like not real, or that we're
that seems to be incorrect on its face, what Keffals just said. Like the equivalent would be as if, like, for example, you're chatting with someone on a dating app and you're using an avatar that presents as female or male, and your interlocutor on a dating app, the person you're talking to, is confused about your gender, and they think that you're a man or a woman, and they're attracted to a man or a woman, but you reveal after you arrange like a meeting or whatever that no, in fact, I'm the contrary of my presentation. What's being touched on a little bit here is there's something sort of intrinsically perverse about having like a really hard line on what amounts in the end to purely aesthetic grounds. But that seems... This is where Polly gets hung up. He says with gusto he is a guy that cross-dresses and is not, and I repeat, not trans. If I'm on Grindr, it's an interlocutor. Well, it is now if you want to continue following my channel.
We're actually traps?
Like, here's the thing, like, objectively, maybe objectively is the wrong word. When Keffals says, like, you're gay if you like a person who, if you're attracted to someone who portrays as female but happens to be male, you are, in that moment, attracted to someone who is female presenting, or you're attracted to, you're attracted to someone who happens to be the same sex as you, but you've been in some respect misled, which is distinct from people who insist, for example, that trans people have to disclose whether or not they got bottom surgery or that they're trans or whatever. Because they are actually what they are portraying. What you have is additional hang-ups about whether or not society as a whole sort of historically bestows that aesthetic upon people with like a certain chromosome or genital set or whatever at birth. That's different. Like in the case, like what's the misleading part is that Finn is saying that he's a woman in order to confuse the people he's talking to, when he's not a woman. He's a cis man who's cross-dressing. A trans woman is not misleading someone when they dress and portray themselves and say that they're a woman, because they are. That's the difference. Yeah, I don't think that you didn't know the drag queen wasn't a cis woman. That means you're gay when sexuality is so much in your head and self-perception. Yeah. I see it as most likely harmful and likely to reinforce transphobia, IMO. I don't know about that. And I do have some regard for that kind of move generally, because it breaks down, or at the very least it presents something of a challenge to people's sense that they just categorically cannot be attracted to people of some description, based upon fairly arbitrary and incidental characteristics that don't actually track personality type, how you actually relate to the person, how they actually relate to society, things like that. Keffals' initial reaction to Finn's video was a bit provocative. Her analysis was people only hate him because he's hot. I don't think that's true. I don't want to like discount Polly's concern here categorically. Yeah, we'll let this play out a bit more.
No, like I feel like they're gonna do this regardless.
Okay.
Finn is the man.
Okay.
Finn's always identified as
okay.
the man.
Okay, but like transphobes don't care about that, and people who are not, who are not, well, I guess super in tune with trans issues are not going to think there's a dime's worth of difference between Finn saying, haha, I fooled you, look, I'm just a man who looks every bit as much as a woman, and some other actually trans content creator that does the same thing or would do the same thing, except the harm that comes from that falls solely on the trans community or largely unfairly on the trans community, which is a much more marginalized community.
Really do not understand how you're coming to the conclusion that Finn increases the amount of transphobia in the world.
So if you...
This is important.
If you lean into any trope, like if you lean into sort of, I mean, I hate to like use this as a crude example, but if you make sort of racist jokes that are obviously racist in a way to sort of to straw man
right.
like racism, you're going to have racial minorities taking strays and being harmed by that. Like the furthering of tropes, like are you saying I need to prove to you that the furthering of transphobic tropes hurts the trans community? Like that's not a given to you?
So would you equally take offense when trans women who are doing sex work play into these tropes on incredibly large platforms because they know that it sells?
Finn is not trans. Finn is cis. Trans women that do that trans women are doing that, and they are doing it because they have to. They live in a transphobic society. They're doing the best they can, and it's to say those two things are the same.
So here's where I can see a case being made. I don't think this is necessarily where Polly's going. But like if you're going to say that, haha, I'm secretly a male when you present it as female, that does lean into the idea that trans women are essentially men in disguise. So if you are attracted to a trans woman as a woman, and then you learn that, oh, they've got XY chromosomes, or they have a penis, or had a penis, or whatever, then therefore you're gay. Because I don't know if he's leading with... I don't think he's trying to pass as a trans woman. Finn is trying to pass as a woman simpliciter, so as a cis woman. And that's where that comes in. So I can see that being a problem. If it's the bare fact of... what is the trope exactly? I'm not entirely clear on that either. But Finn hasn't done that kind of content in a long time, as in years ago, I think. Okay, well, it doesn't matter if he's doing it right now or not. I don't really care about Finn in particular. Like, just the activity itself.
Blows my mind.
No, because if you're making...
Are you going to pretend like there's not a difference between those two things?
No, but I feel like if you're making this argument, it would actually be more harmful for trans people to do it because they're more representative of the trans community than Finn ever will be.
The average person who's going to be willing to go along with transphobic tropes are transphobic people. Are you kidding me? So, like, it doesn't matter to the average transphobe whether Finn's doing...
Well, they're already transphobic. Are we talking about spreading transphobia? Are we talking about reinforcing existing transphobia, or are we or what is it that we're talking about exactly? Here's an additional complicating factor here. Generally, transphobic people, they aren't simply transphobic. They're not phobia towards trans people merely. They also have a phobia towards the category of trans itself, and so they generally regard people who are attracted to trans women who are male as being essentially gay. People who are attracted to trans men who are female are essentially gay because they deny the category. It doesn't seem like there's additional content being added here. Literally all you have is a cis person fooling other people into being attracted to them because he adopted aesthetics that they find attractive. And it's humorous because it sort of lays bare that, well, actually you're it doesn't seem that the stated fixedness of your sexuality is as fixed as you claimed earlier, or something like that, you know? Yeah, that's a good Steelman. Also, the idea that no one even dresses up as a woman as a gotcha has always been a bad argument, because sometimes people do. They're just not trans women. Trans women are women, I guess.
Or an actual trans woman are doing it, it's not a dime's worth of difference. But one person doing it receives none of the fucking fallout from furthering transphobic tropes, and the other person is doing it because they have to and faces all of the fallout anyway. The fact that you are making this argument shows me why you're not really thinking about this hard enough, and why I'm actually kind of disappointed in how you've engaged with this topic in its entirety. I thought you would at least be somewhat charitable.
Would she have like a similar attitude? Someone help me out to think this through, if this would be analogous. Would she have a similar condemnatory attitude towards a trans man who goes girl mode or something? Because I know trans men who occasionally wear like female dress up for social reasons, or just because they happen to have a lot of it because they started their transition recently. They're presenting in that case as female when they're not. In essence, they're doing exactly what Finn is doing, and sometimes they're passing really effectively. I don't know. Because again, like it would lend to an increase in transphobia. Would it though? See, so when a trans man dresses in women's clothes, or women's coded clothes, clothes are not don't actually have a biological sex or a gender, believe it or not. They're just clothes. I guess they can be gendered, but that's slightly different. When they dress in women's clothes, they are presenting, you could argue deceptively in a benign way, as something that they're not. They're presenting as women to a broader society, when in fact they're men. Same move. Not analogous. Hiding can be self-preservation. I mean, fine. Although, you know, like, gay cis men could hide in a similar way, I could imagine. Potentially. I can imagine a circumstance for that. Lol, girl clothes have to... Well, I'm adding gender to them. I'm just talking about the bare fact that there's no there's nothing written into the cosmos that says that pink textiles must go on women and not men. You know? Superman's favorite color is pink. I don't think he's canonically a trans woman, but, you know, it's not beyond the pale.
To the obvious position here that like Finn doing something transphobic essentially is not the same as some
I don't
sex
think that
worker.
Finn is doing anything transphobic.
Okay, well, would you just?
I'm not convinced.
Yeah, she needs to establish this like hard if she's gonna make this case, and she really should have like led with that. This is transphobic because, not some nebulous oh, this is a cis guy fooling people into thinking he's a woman and then pulling up the curtains and har har, it's just a prank, bro. you need more than just an assumption that we are going to intuitively interpret that as necessarily transphobic or as tending to transphobia or whatever. You can try and draw those connections, but you need to establish that they're plausible, likely, and that they're actually the case. This is actually going on. Superman is a transhuman. No, Superman is a Kryptonian. He's not even a human. However, the Kryptonians appear to still have a functioning, a living gender binary in their culture, because despite being hyper-advanced aliens, they are horribly retrograde. Okay, my thoughts so far. This Finn person, a cis man, is cross-dressing. How is that transphobic? That's the question. We are waiting to hear.
Would you deny that he's furthering transphobic tropes?
No, I actually think that Finn is doing good at presenting a role model for gender nonconforming men and is making the world a less transphobic place with their platform.
Okay, so then if you don't think...
Also a less homophobic place, and these things are connected, right? Because, if you're, like, there's sort of like a stack of different things that people need to break down in order to be sort of receptive to accepting people's avowed gender identities, apart from how society codes them based on their genital sets when they're born. If you break down people's homophobia by demonstrating that what they are attracted to is contingent on a series of really quite meaningless factors ultimately, then it becomes those factors now weigh less in terms of them willing to consider the fluidity and contingency of our gender categories. That's an important step, and it's not accidental that the earliest treatments of trans people regard them essentially as a variation of homosexual people. Like going all the way back to the earliest highlighting of the category of gender nonconforming people, all the way back to Kraft Ebing. So I don't see that. There is like a thematic connection. You have somebody who's at least biologically male, fooling other people into assuming wrongly that he's biologically female. And this is consistent with how transphobes view trans people very generally. Okay, but how does that contribute to exacerbating that? It's not enough to just say, oh, well, there's some kind of symmetry here between the two. That's not enough. You need to actually connect the dots, actually show me how this is harmful, and you need to be specific. That only works if you actually do that work after. To be clear, going, now you're gay simply is harmful. I agree with that part. Assuming that your audience buys it, right? If the move is to mock somebody who is insisting that they're super straight or something, or like a hetero chauvinist or whatever, who is sort of treating straight people like they're the main characters and that everybody else is some kind of clinical deviation. In that context, that's actually breaking down something potentially. You're not actually making the clinical diagnosis, hey, you're actually gay. They're mocking the person who is insisting, no, they're straight, and it's more healthy to be straight or whatever. It depends on like who the audience is, who the target is, right? It sounds like that's not even a thing that happens present Sunday. What are we talking about here? I agree with Keffals here. We're on the line of gender stereotype and presentation and identity. They're not the same thing. That's what Finn's showing. Yeah, well, that's sort of my read on it too at this point. Present Sunday, most of the guys that Finn messes with are Coomers online, sexually harassing women on Omegle. Well, there you go.
somebody saying, haha, I'm a trap, if your position is as a fucking cis man that the strays that are obviously going to be taken by the trans community, he's entitled to do that for whatever reason you're coming up with. And I mean,
she's talking about strays. What strays? You can't just say that. You need to give an example. What strays? Does anybody have like any notion of what she has in mind here by strays? I still don't get how this is an issue, considering that Finn states that he isn't trans all the time, so he's not fooling anyone. So he's publicly right, of course, because we know this. So he's publicly a cis person, a cis man. He describes himself as a cis man on his wider-reaching channels, and then, sort of as a prank, he goes in and finds chauvinistic, sexist, and transphobic men, or homophobic men rather, and he makes a fool of them for something it is fitting to be made a fool of for. I don't have an issue with that. I don't know why anyone would have an issue with that. And he used to do this long ago, so this is recent. Okay, well, why are we talking about this now then? If this is old. Has anyone here not made fun of the fact that non-normative gender expression complicates antiquated notions of sexual orientation? Yeah, basically. What do we think about weaponizing trans homophobia against trans homophobes? I see how it can break down barriers, but do you think it's bigoted itself? I mean, we do that rhetorically all the time, do we not? Like, whenever you're bringing up, like, somebody who's intersex, or somebody who's been sterilized, or whatever, as a counter to some sex essentialist notion of gender as being necessarily that which conforms to what genital set or reproductive role you play. It's not quite as bombastic as, like, you know, doing the catwalk and then turning around, revealing that, like, you've got, like, you know, male body parts or whatever, but I'm walking in knowing only what Polly said on Twitter, and it pissed me off so much that I became genuinely livid and wrote hundreds of words on the subject. Should watch Demon Mama's video on, you know, taking care of yourself or taking care of Twitter, is how I would characterize that.
I mean, I can see why people are unreachable on this.
This argument just opens you up to such weird positions. That's the problem.
How?
Like, if you're going to make this exact argument, then why aren't you going after drag queens? It's like, oh, so you think being a woman is
Indeed.
a performance? You think you can just, like, dress up like a woman and do a show and dance?
Drag queens don't say I'm a trap. Like it's different when
what
you...
are you talking about? I have seen...
That's not true. I have seen them say this. This is not true. General rule of thumb, never say something to the effect, especially in a debate, never say something to the effect of, this group of people never does X. Because it's a wide world out there. Everybody can find a counterexample.
Seen so many drag queens say I'm a trap.
Okay, but they're not like looking... The drag queen argument is so stupid because drag queens like go out of their way to not even look like cis women. They're like caricatures, for fuck's sake. It is an artistic endeavor. What Finn's doing is essentially saying I'm a trap, and
that's not necessarily true. No, sometimes they're very much going for passing. It's not just a caricature. Like, they do a lot of work. It's not just a caricature. That's incorrect.
And winking and nodding and looking exactly like a trans woman, but saying I'm not,
looking exactly like a trans woman.
I'm a
what does a trans woman look like exactly to you?
Well, okay, so I should say a transphobic caricature of a trans.
There are trans women who get confused for gay men in drag, for drag queens, right? That's a thing, unfortunately. There are people with, like, very, you know, pronounced male-coded features who will dress fabulously, and they'll look good doing it, but they'll be mistaken. Why? Because there isn't a default look for a trans woman, or for a woman, or for a drag queen, or whatever. Human appearances of all attached to all categories, admit of almost infinite variety. There's no rule about this. This is a strange thing to lean on.
Trans woman is somebody that says, haha, I trapped you, you're gay now, and is clearly like doing it to appeal to transphobic sensibilities. And what makes it problematic is because he is not trans and he doesn't suffer the consequences of those actions. Like, there's very good reason to critique his behavior on a fucking equitable sort of don't punch down sort of basis. Like, it seems relatively obvious to me that, like, if you are in a more privileged position, why is it acceptable for you to engage in behavior for clout and to grow your platform in ways that are obviously going to have fallout with people far more marginalized than you and far more subject to those same sort of transphobic attacks without even, asking for it? People call me a trap and I don't even have to, like, do any trapperson type shit that he does.
Okay.
So he's making it easier for them to say, you're all traps anyway. You all look the same to me. This is an easy argument.
No, I don't think that. Like, I think that
All right,
regardless...
well, I guess
Well, no, because here's the crucial point. Like, the reveal by Finn is not that he has a male physique, and that therefore, haha, you found a male physique attractive. The joke that he's playing is that he identifies as a man, and he looks that good to somebody who is ostensibly not attracted to male features. That's the joke. If it was a trans man who's doing exactly the same thing,
okay, I guess
What?
that's, like, what do you, okay, all right, I guess you don't think that, but that's not a response to the critique. That's not a
I was
helpful.
about to formulate my response.
All right, go ahead.
As I said, I think that transphobia is going to be a thing regardless of whether or not Finn does what they're doing, which has very...
in fact, you know what it's a great retort to. It's a great retort to that whole you can always tell meme, which is hilarious when people do it to cis people by accident, and it's like, but like quite literally, no, you can't, and that goes in both ways. I mean, if you just insist that gender and sex are identical anyways, it's going to be lost on you because you're operating in a very stupid space where you have an entire relevant set of categories you're just not able to process. But I go back to my original thesis. Are we for gender non-conforming people regardless of whether we're cis or trans or not? Yeah. We also, additionally, by the way, only have Finn's word, as this is the case with everybody, Finn's word that, he is in fact a cis man. We just don't know. Don't know. We rely on vowels for this kind of thing. Finn will have those you can always tell folks break down crying, yeah.
very little to do with the trans community. Like, Finn's made it very clear, I'm not a trans person, I am just a cross-dresser. Weirdly enough, one of your mods actually said, Finn isn't gender non-conforming, a cross-dresser, or a femboy. He isn't doing this because he likes to dress this way. He doesn't dress this way unless it's for work. It's like, why is it that your community is trying to police a gender non-conforming person's expression? Why is that okay?
Well, I could go back to what I just said. What's not okay is furthering transphobic tropes as an edgy way to grow your platform as a cis person.
Hey, you want to know, just, here's my edgy comment for tonight. Attacking everybody in your orbit without any discrimination, any judgment, any plan for coalition building or for the health of your respective communities, of which there's a lot of bleed over between Poli and Keffals, for the sake of growing your platform by having a bombastic clash with another person of your political description, namely notable lefty trans woman on Twitch, that is also a transphobic trope. That's the whole these people are only in it for their own aggrandizement or whatever. It's all about their own image. That's a transphobic trope. Nobody's attacking any of these people for that, and they shouldn't. But it's the same line of argumentation. It's like this entire category with no fine-grained distinctions within it, because they don't even acknowledge the validity of the category itself. It's just, as far as the vast majority of transphobic people are concerned, and they outnumber all of you 100 to 1. They outnumber all of us 100 to 1. Homophobic people as well, etc., etc., etc. They will not care. They will use the arbitrary lines that you have thrown amongst, that we have thrown amongst ourselves, in order to one-up each other, in order to make like little incremental gains in our online profile, to destroy all of us, flatten us all down. And I can say that because it's not just trans people at that level of resolution. The slope has remained slippery, so to speak.
You're just going to completely ignore that. That it's like...
What are you talking about? Are you trying to me to answer for somebody what somebody said? I mean, fuck, do you want me to go through every dumb fuck? I mean, I don't even think that's a bad point necessarily. But do you want me to... Do you want me to go through... Hold on.
Like, okay,
you want me to answer for everything that everybody has said that you've sort of said? Get the fuck out of here. Why don't you just sort of...
Wait, when did I say that?
Why don't you...
said that.
Why don't you engage with what I'm saying? Or I could explain to you why that statement on Twitter may actually have some merit, but it's going to have a more nuanced discussion. But we can't even get there when you are unable to accept that somebody who does transphobic tropes as a cis person has problematic content. Like, if we can't get there, then we're not even at stage one. Like you're sort of making yourself completely unable to understand the critique at all.
Is a gender non-conforming person cis? Where are we drawing the line on what cis is?
Finn is not a trans woman. Finn is not going to be.
There are people who are not trans women or trans men who are not cis. Here's one of the upshots of the fact that gender is not actually determined, or should not be regarded as being determined in a prescriptive sense by your genital set growing up. The binary of there only being two is arbitrary. We've already separated gender identity and expression from genital sets. The insistence on there only being two is a continued reference to those sets. You are still giving them credence. Why? Why would you? Those are the things that people are using to insist that you were born with this organ, therefore you are destined for work, war, and economic slavery, or you were born with these organs, so domestic slavery, no work, no war, depending on where you are and when you are, and you need to wear giant frilly outfits that are open at the bottom. Why would you insist on this? Because that's what you're doing. If you're insisting that there is no in between, well, what's suspending the binary? It's the sex organs. You're still falling into the same trap. That's unfortunate phrasing, but you get the idea. Like, is Demon Mama not allowed to go hunting? Does she have to only wear like the geisha makeup or whatever that was? She looked good in it, by the way. Does Doe have to wear antlers all the time? You know, like it's... Oh god, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. My theory of gender gives space for multiple types of cis people, just like multiple types of cis people. That's interesting. Just like there's variance in trans people, binary dysphoric. Well, multiple types of cis people. I suppose you could be like you could be sort of intersex and identify with that in a gendered sense. But I don't know why you would ascribe a gender to that in the first place. Like, gender includes things like what you typically are expected to dress as, what vocations you're expected to have, your sort of like different kinds of social expression. To a certain extent, to a certain extent, even just invoking these at all is like super question begging, given we've already taken these steps to show how all these things are super arbitrary. That's why I have a lot of sympathy towards the gender abolition stance almost categorically. I think I think we're putting our finger on something when we're talking about gender. I think there are like different types of personalities where it's appropriate to not, for example, send somebody to die horribly in war solely on the basis that they were born with a penis, as if this is like an adequate way to judge whether or not that's an appropriate position to put somebody into. It actually gets really horrific when you think about it. People like what's the chauvinist attitude towards putting women in war? They hate the idea of having like gentle, caring individuals being torn limb from limb by cruel strangers using industrial machinery. But what if you're doing that anyways, and you're allowing yourself to because you just don't give a shit so long as they've got a long dangly bit between their legs? It gets a little insane, you know?
Harmed by the furtherance, or at least will be far less harmed than trans people by the furtherance of transphobic tropes.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay, but does that make Finn cis?
Huh?
So like a non.
Okay, so I don't know why you're playing word games with me here.
I'm
Finn
not playing a word
is
game.
not a trans person.
No, but Finn is not gender conforming almost by definition. Finn is cross-dressing. Cross-dressing, that's what they're not conforming to. They're crossing, right? They're not dressing as men do, right? That's the point.
Oh, or at least
I never
not
said this.
not okay. Then what are you talking about then? I mean, are you trying to have it both ways
to
here?
define what cis is, because you're trying to use Finn as cis as a way to dismiss.
Yeah,
Finn.
but he says he's cis. He says he's cis, and he puts up on his, and the way he proves he's cis is he pins on his like Twitter or whatever.
President Sunday might want to take a look at the content. It seems like he's assuming it's something different. He just makes fun of dressing as a girl. He's not fooling people. Maybe new viewers for 2 seconds. Well, I'm allowing for that, right? That's not. I'm. That's fine. I was running with the assumption early on that he was doing this for a sustained period of time. But I also honestly I don't care. I just don't care. I don't. She hasn't drawn an actual like causal chain where this produces harm.
Here's my birth certificate, and I'm a man. Like one that has a two-prong effect. Is one, it says that I'm cis, but it also winks and nods to his trans audience. Look, I care about my assigned gender at birth just like you do. Like, I mean, like, you can't. I mean, come on. Like, are we gonna be stupid and let's just sort of like let him have it both ways just because he's a large content creator?
No, I'm not being stupid.
I mean, I hate being dogpiled as much as the next person, right? Like,
right, but it's like
here's a question. So, Finn reveals that he's actually a cis man, right? What about a very passing trans woman who reveals she has a dick? That happens, right? That happens. In fact, that's even played up by certain people who are in online sex work. Like, by the way, like that would feed into the same trope, would it not? Because if you are a transphobe and you already deny the category, then really it's the bare fact of having specific organs, the revelation of specific organs that are not telegraphed by your clothing, which makes gendered clothing seem really strange, doesn't it, when you think about it that way? It's like, this is a penis shirt. For the love of God, Titan, do not clip that.
You're willing to, with your community and your mods, those are your mods who are just like, okay, I can police the behavior of gender nonconforming people. It's completely okay to do. And when I asked you about this, you just get angry and say, oh,
Well,
you think I can police everything? You think that I can just control everything? But it's like, no, these are the people who moderate your community. You have a responsibility for that. They represent
well,
you.
okay, but hold on a second. Like, the
Peter says in his old content he's laughing along with people being transphobic. Well, that would be a good point of critique. Criticize that. That'd be good. Like abetting that kind of thing? That's not cool. What we're talking about here? Inconsequential.
essential argument here is not changed, and that tweet is essentially in line with what I'm saying. Like, you
You're
can't,
saying that
you
Finn
can't
is
hold
not
on.
a cross-dresser.
Could you let me finish? The essential problem, whether or not he's a
We're in some, like, non-canon, sidequel OVA, aren't we? I'm taking Keffals' side. I am bald. What the fuck is going on here?
cross-dresser is saying he's not a cross-dresser, by the way. I assume the sentiment behind that is that what he's doing is essentially appealing to the transphobic sensibilities of the average person and furthering transphobic tropes for content. That's not what cross-dressers do.
What is the transphobic trope? Is the transphobic trope just that people who wear dresses can have dicks sometimes? That's not a transphobic trope. That's the fact of trans women who haven't had bottom surgery. That's just a thing. Or even some of them who've had bottom surgery, because there's no rule that says, well, some places there is a rule, unfortunately, but there's no rule that says that you need to get the whole thing gone, right?
Cross-dressers dress in gender non-conforming ways and play with gender because they are expressing
Oh, my hair wasn't lost, it was stolen.
themselves. They are not trying to grow their platform at the expense of more marginalized people, right? Just to sort of say, Polly, you're trying to police people's
No, these
presentation
are
is incredibly bad
completely
faith.
different-
Like, well,
It's just two completely different arguments you're sort of smashing together.
What happened to your hair, homie? So, when you get, like, really stressed, like, really, really stressed, it can put your hair follicles into a resting state. And so, like, last week, I was like, what is going on here? It's like, I can sort of see my scalp through this. That's unusual. And, like, I have a high hairline. I've always had one. But, like, this was weird. So I was like, okay, it could be stress, could be something else. I'm not going to do this shit where I try to hide it. I'm just going to shave it really short, and we'll see what we're working with here. And we didn't have a guard on, so it went all the way down to the skin. So it's just... And I had no idea what my scalp looked like under this, so, I mean, thank God I did not inherit my father's bone structure. Because my mother's got has the money skull.
well, no, that's what you're doing. So like,
How am I doing that?
well, you're having a difficult time trying to like explain why furthering transphobic tropes is not that bad, and the only thing you're saying is I disagree and you can't prove that, which is wrong, and you should never force some fucking
No, what
member
I
of a
think is-
marginalized
what I
community to
think is that
prove
you're
that
trying to say
furthering
that-
tropes that are harmful to
No,
them
no,
are
no,
somehow
no.
harmful to them. I mean, but
Like,
now
what
you're
trying
pivoting
do
to
is
something
pretend
else.
That trans people are somehow the arbiters of gender nonconformity when other people can express gender nonconformity however they like.
No, I mean,
Yes!
no.
Yes?
That's a straw man. Like, trans people are the most able to detect and are the most likely
No.
to fall
No.
victim to the furtherance of transphobic tropes.
That's silly. That's so... No. Come on, Polly, you're smarter than this. What, so you have an honorary sociology degree because you're trans? That doesn't make any sense. It takes a tremendous amount of work and study to like accurately predict what the social consequences of a thing are going to be. And frankly, you're not even going to be able to. It's all guesswork. This is like... That's stupid. That's just stupid. Like, what? So you come from a colonized territory or from a colonized people, and therefore you have a de facto systematic understanding of how like these relationships play out? That's not true at all. No, you have to do the work like everybody else to understand things. That's just how it is. You have an advantage perspectively insofar as you understand to a certain degree from your limited space what it is like to be of your category in particular. From a first-person vantage, that is an advantage. That's an advantage that I don't have in trying to like judge the reality on the ground of like what's going on with respect to the people who are involved in these sociological processes. But this doesn't give you superior judgment with respect to the sociological effects of some given performance. That doesn't follow at all.
That others use to further whatever interests they have.
No, it's just
No,
you're not even
okay.
responding to what
No.
I'm saying.
Well, I mean, you're trying to straw man me, and you're getting frustrated that I'm not falling for the straw man. I get that, but like,
I don't even think you
have
know
to.
what straw man means.
I'm not.
Like
okay,
I was also
okay,
in high
I'm
school
not
debate.
sure.
It's fine.
Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not sure where to go with this because I feel like I might, I might be being owned in the marketplace of ideas by the high school debate lord here. But
You might be. You might be Polly. That's a possibility.
but like
What?
again, the fact remains that when members of the trans community have a valid criticism here about a non-trans content creator who has made their fucking
Okay, Semaphore, if you want me to look at the content, send me the content. I don't know these people. Like, just send it to me. This is embarrassing. This is what kills me too, right? Like, look, she could have the exact same position that she does. It'd be problematic for all the same reasons. I think I even criticized something that Keffals said earlier in this conversation. I can't remember what it was. And I think I probably changed my tune about it, but like, just talk like a normal person. Just talk. Keffals has been, certainly by comparison to Poli here, Keffals has just been engaging in a conversation. She didn't give me that kind of courtesy. Granted, I came in really hot anyways. And justly so, in my opinion. But she apologized for that, and we're cool now. But like, just talk. She hasn't gone on the attack on Poli. They're talking about something that is, to a certain minimal degree, separate from both of them. This is just an issue that they can work through. They're not determining the fate of Finn here and now. There is no actual consequence to this conversation, except if one of them destroys their credibility by being completely unreasonable, which she's doing, and needlessly. There's no advantage to doing it.
entire platform from day one, essentially.
Did PS shave his eyebrows as well as his head? I have extremely thick eyebrows. What the hell are you talking about? Although also like very deep eye sockets. It's the Nordic genes.
So
You're
doing
forgiven.
transphobic type trap content and the like, saying, "Look, I think you are for your own interests, furthering the very kind of tropes and very kind of beliefs that are harmful to people like me." Like,
Can we have a PS stream where non-awful trans people can talk about trans stuff? It's been a little tiring seeing all the trans discourse filtered through Poli lately. My Discord server, unbeknownst to many, is owned by a trans man, is moderated by more than one trans woman, I believe, and is a massively trans-friendly space with some of the smartest and most talented trans people in existence. I think I've scooped them all up, to be totally honest with you, judging by the quality of my intro music. Wednesday stuff is fantastic.
It is super disappointing that some of the larger trans content creators, which I hasten to add are much smaller than the trans quote unquote content creator who Finn is, are completely unwilling to hear that this critique. It's super disappointing. And instead, like, you're just straw manning me and saying something that a mod said.
You know what's also a good space? As a consequence of like the recent bridge we've built with Demon Mama and her community and Doe as well. Demon Mama's community is fantastic. All the best of Vosh's community bled over there. And like there's a lot of similarity in the tone between my server and Demon Mama's. We're in the weirdest timeline, people. We really are. I don't know how the hell we ended up here. I'm absolutely sympathetic to Keffals in a debate. We're friends with Demon Mama. What is going on? Which of you made a deal with Satan? Fess up.
Completely out of the context of what that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, your community seems to really have an issue with gender nonconforming people.
I mean, you could keep lying and saying that. No, hold on a second. You're lying now. You're lying.
I have the receipt right here. It's
what
just like, here's your mod.
Okay, all right. So like you're literally straw manning. They're like one of your mods, Polly, says this, and I'm going to interpret this way, and I'm going to ignore everything you said, and then hold that against you.
You were in the same conversation. You could have told your mod not to do that.
If she, as the head presumably of her moderators, allowed a statement to go unchallenged, or worse, ratified it, gave agreement to it, laughed at it approvingly, whatever, then it's perfectly fair, pending some signal action by Poli that, no, you've misread this. Maybe I made a mistake in not being sufficiently loud in my condemnation of this statement, but this is not representative of our community. That's the move she needs to make. Not just like laugh this off, as if she has a reputation at this juncture for actually taking these things seriously and being reasonable and engaging in like constructive collaboration to improve the space, because that's simply not what she's done. The one case where she's done this that I've seen was with respect to Loner Box, and credit to her for that. But her interactions with everybody else have been ridiculous. And speaking of clout chasing, like, she is single-handedly helping to give Will a lifeline. She is continuing to give him content. Will's entire appeal, Will and his channel, for the uninitiated, Will and his channel's entire appeal at this juncture, and it pains me to say it, because on some level I feel bad for the guy, because I think he's completely out of his depth. Will's entire appeal is that he is abused and made fun of by basically everybody he engages with, because everybody else has more self-awareness than him. All Polly has to do to stamp him out forever, and his incredibly irresponsible activities, is just ignore him. But she goes for it because it's content. All of this is content. She's fighting with Keffals right now instead of building bridges and like moderating her community and making her community one that can actually collaborate with other people so that it can actually have some kind of positive effect on the world as a community. She's seeking out bombastic blood sports, which is good for content. Like, hey, it got me watching it, but it's not helping anybody. Whose will? Exactly. Indeed.
Okay, all right. So I need to answer for every straw man interpretation that you come up with about somebody that's from my community.
If they're a moderator, yes, you're the captain of the ship.
And then you're going to hold that against me.
Your moderators.
You are just coming
This
up.
is why I very wisely gave away my community to a trans man at the beginning of my channel's history. That's a joke. Ambrose is actually the best thing that's happened to that channel. He's single-handedly made it the space that it is. I could not have managed that.
With another way to silence criticism at this point. Like, you're not going to say, Polly, you're just jealous.
No.
Polly, instead...
Single-handedly is wrong. We have a fantastic mod team that has also been key and instrumental. Not also been, but has been instrumental. You get it. I did not make that that community. I did attract a certain kind of person, and I'm proud of that. We have like a very high quality of membership overall, and I believe I definitely played a role in that. But in terms of like actually maintaining and structuring and policing the space and making it and keeping it what it is, that's entirely them. It's not me.
Your community is terrible.
The majority of this conversation has been me asking you questions and you getting mad at me asking questions.
Well, I don't think that's an accurate representation of the discussion because your questions don't really follow from the discussion. You just, like... So I ask again, do you think that I will say this the most gentle...
Single-handedly is wrong because single-handed is an adverb. Your dentist does not say open widely. Well, you clearly don't know my dentist.
Or I will ask this in the most gentle way that I can.
Is it the same thing about furthering transphobic tropes? Because when I asked about when trans people do the same thing, you say this is fine, but they have more to do with the trans community. They have a higher duty to represent the trans community. So it's weird that you're not holding your own community.
Wait a second. Are you saying that that trans people have a higher obligation to like control their potential like furtherance of transphobic tropes than transphobes do that are not in the trans community?
Well, okay, so when you say transphobes, are you talking about...
Stop laughing, Polly.
No, I'm just trying to say, like, what you said is trans people have to behave themselves, essentially. And I'm like, wait a second, for what? Wait. Trans people have to behave themselves because... And like, somebody like Finn or...
Polly, look deep into my eyes. You're doing the will thing. Don't do the will thing.
Or whatever, or even a transphobic person can do whatever they want because they're not trans. Like, this is fucking brain disease.
That's not the argument. I'm saying that if you're a trans
try again then. Let me know. What is... Go ahead.
If you're a trans person and you have a larger platform, you do have an obligation to some extent in order to make sure that you're doing a good enough job representing trans people as a whole. Because like a lot of people are going to see you, and that's going to be the first person they see that's trans.
Yeah.
But that's the essential argument, is the person who doesn't know anything is going to think, because they don't really understand the nuance in the way that you do or a lot of people do, is that Finn is not actually trans representation. So when he does trap related... Hold on, let me finish for fuck's sake. What? I didn't say this. I said, like, it's quite obvious, by the way, that...
Why is she so hostile? I don't like, even if like you've had like a really hostile and vicious interaction on Twitter, like when you're having like a live conversation, you at a certain level have to like reset, the game a little bit, because this is a new mode of communication. You're like, it's a venture to try and see if you can't have like a different type of conversation in this format. If it's a repeat of the same thing, then... Well, I mean, if you're against clout, Polly, I can't imagine what else you're doing this for if this is simply a reiteration of something that's already taken place elsewhere. Keffals has been uncharacteristically generous and accommodating in this conversation. And she's spoken far less than Polly has. I don't know who she thinks she's talking to. Okay, let's think this through for a second. What is Polly's logic here? Not in terms of the argument. We know what the argument's logic is. What is feeding into these rhetorical decisions? I don't know, first of all, obviously. I'm making some inferences, but let's make some inferences. What have been her successful engagements to wit? She has, with Will, I don't think with me. Maybe a little bit with me. I don't know what the reception was from people in her sphere. The Loner Box one was successful. The Loner Box conversation versus this one, night and day. She was astonishingly diplomatic and patient in that conversation. And she killed it as a result. With Will, didn't need to be, because Will was cartoonishly vile. To a point where I still have difficulty computing that as being like his actual stance, not the result of gross incompetence, which is a flaw on my end, I suspect, because I'm probably giving him undue charity. With me, she did the exact same thing with Will, but it was also like it was undermotivated, and so it simply hindered conversation. In this particular case, this is somebody who is not just an ally. This is somebody who, from a purely cynical vantage point, if you have a positive working relationship with this person, you can actually become efficacious. You can actually get an audience, and you can actually start to help to rally a very large community around these issues, and to interfere where you believe that there are things that are being ignored, things that are being overly emphasized, or mistakes are being made. She is choosing instead to be reflexively hostile. Why? Well, I can only assume she's choosing to be reflexively hostile because she's making two assumptions. The first one is that if she quote-unquote beats Keffals, this turns to her favor in some way. If this is what her thought process is, she's very mistaken. I'm not saying it is, I don't know, but she's very mistaken. The second one is she feels like her competence and her judgment are being directly scrutinized by this conversation, and she needs to beat Keffals in order to protect herself that way. That is also a mistake. What she actually needs to do, especially given Keffals' own reputation bluntly, what she needs to do is just be the most reasonable party here, because there is not a proliferation of people who will reflexively take Keffals' side outside of Keffals' own community. This will allow her to have future conversations to make her case more persuasively later on if she really believes in it. So I guess this is reflexive. It's almost a stress response, perhaps. It's like when Vosh finds himself in conversation with somebody who's more educated than he is on some topic, and sometimes is able to overcome the insecurity about that to have like a positive conversation, and sometimes he isn't. And I understand the impulse, but the result is you end up looking like it just looks bad. It just looks bad.
I mean, the fact that you can't really conceive of the idea that the average person who comes across Finn's content being 100% clear that this is not sort of trans-related, or at least trans-tropey-related content that leans heavily into fucking trap discourse, and instead saying, you much smaller trans creators need to mind your P's and Q's and don't say anything about Finn because he's not trans?
Why are you being so aggressive towards me? Like, I haven't raised my voice at you once, and you're telling me to fuck off, and you're yelling at me.
This was the mistake.
Are you going to answer my question or not?
It doesn't matter. At this point, this was her position requires you to buy into so many highly tenuous positions on things that I don't know if she can sustain in an actual argument individually. The bare fact that she has come off as basically a bully in this conversation with someone who has not, she loses. And it really is like she loses at that point, because she has chosen it to be a game where somebody loses and somebody wins. Which you can play, but you'd best not miss if that's what you're going to do. And she's missing really hard. This is just bad. This is just really bad. She's treating Keffals like she's Will, essentially. She's treating a lot of people like they're Will. I don't know what is going through her head when she's determining in her mind how to respond to these people.
Not.
No, I'm just kind of speechless by like this aggression when I thought we could have a civil conversation about this.
Are you going to answer my question, or are you not going to answer my
She
question?
doesn't need to.
Can you
You're
repeat
out.
the question? Like, I was
Alright,
just kind
so-
of shocked ever since that.
All right, so it seems like what you're doing here is you're saying, hey, smaller trans content creators that are harmed by transphobic tropes, make sure you mind your P's and Q's. And Finn, who to the average dumbfuck looks quite a lot like a trans content creator or trans-esque content creator, you can do whatever you want, even if it harms the trans community. That's what it sounds like to me you're saying.
How does Finn look like a trans content creator?
To the average person who is just sort of clicking around. I thought he was a trans content creator until I sort of dug into the content. I was like, oh, I guess he's not. But
So your issue is just with people who cross-dress. That's dumb, Polly. That's dumb. You do not want to sign on to a worldview in which your genital set at birth dictates what clothing is appropriate for you.
these are a lot of transphobic tropes that we would take strays from. Like, this seems to be a super easy argument. Like, I don't understand, like, the fucking resistance to recognizing the bad effects on people like you and me that a larger non-trans content creator, they're sort of leaning into trap-related content, like why that's a problem and is perfectly reasonable to call out.
The average effect that Finn has is overwhelmingly positive for the trans community. In fact, I've talked to a lot of the trans people in Finn's community.
Yeah, but that doesn't answer the question. Like, the critique can remain, right? You can do plenty of good.
But the critique is not established. You actually haven't established that he's causing harm. You've conjectured that he's leaning into a trope. The trope is ill-defined. The leaning into is ill-defined. The harm is ill-defined. You can't just say it leans into a transphobic trope as if that's simply uncontroversial, and then call it a day. You haven't actually made your case. You need to go from A to Z, and you need to show exactly all the beats that move from this point to this causing harm. You need to do that. And you could do that in the genocide conversation. You did that well. You're not doing that here. Like, we know that Polly knows how to argue. This is the frustrating thing. This isn't... She's not incompetent. She can do this. This is a decision.
And I'm not even going to say there's no good that's done there. I'm just saying, like, it is a perfectly reasonable critique that Finn, as a non-trans content creator who, to the average person who's clicking around, it's not going to be obvious to, leaning into trap-related content is problematic, and he should not do that.
No, I just think it's a silly argument.
No?
Really.
Okay, it's silly.
Have to do with... Yeah, it is silly.
All
It's
right.
silly.
Okay, just let him do more transphobia. That's fine.
Because it's not transphobia. Finn's impact is overwhelmingly positive for both trans people.
Now, if memory serves, Polly has characterized Keffals' points as stupid. She's told Keffals to fuck off. She's been raising her voice and yelling at her. The harshest Keffals has gone as she characterized her point, Polly's point, as silly. What a different world we would be in right now if Keffals had this kind of self-control and composure a few months ago. This is actual growth. I'm actually pleased to see that she's doing very well.
And for cis men.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
It's a far cry away from calling Stardust a stupid C-word on stream. She's doing fantastically. It's unusual to see. People usually get worse, not better.
Is calling a trans person a trap, is that transphobic?
Yeah, it
Yes.
is, but how's Finn doing that? Finn's not doing it.
Wait a second. You don't think he makes trap-related jokes and saying...
Okay, but it's not enough to say that the jokes utilize some element of transphobic culture or something, to assert that therefore, or to justify the claim that therefore this is abetting transphobia. All humor mocking some attitude about something is going to, at some level, invoke elements of that attitude. That's why there are jokes about that, right?
You don't think he does
because,
that?
Yeah, he does. But it's fine. He can do that.
He can make transphobic jokes. Why?
That's not a transphobic joke. That's not transphobic jokes. Traps don't own the word trap. I mean, trans people do not own the word trap. That's not true.
Well, right, but like, you know, like white people don't own the N-word, but that doesn't make it
What the
good.
fuck does that have to do with what we're talking about?
Well, the fact you can't see it, I think, sort of explains the disconnect here.
No. It's because that T-slur targets both trans women and men who cross-dress. It doesn't just target trans women. It targets both. It specifically targets people who have male biological features, who dress in a feminine fashion so that they look attractive to cis heterosexual men. That's it. That's it.
Here, like you can't use
Which
slurs or like wink and nod.
Which Finn is. Finn is also targeted by that slur. So the analogy would be that black people don't just own the N-word. And there's actually a point there, because there are other people for whom that has been modified or has been adapted to target. Right? Anybody see well, we know what the modifications are. I don't need to point to them, but you get the point. What one weird one that I'm almost certain is anachronistic, but one of them occurs in Revenant.
Toward slurs or like problematic tropes that are targeted at a marginalized community. If you're not in the marginalized community and expect to not receive criticism,
In fact, white people exclusively are not able to use it. It is uniquely inappropriate for white people to use the N slur.
For it at the very least.
What did? Okay,
How is this hard? I mean, Jesus.
How is what hard? Because
how is this hard?
Polly.
People who aren't trans can totally use the word trap.
Oh, okay, all right.
Trap's not a transphobic slur.
Oh, Jesus.
It can be used as one.
All right.
If you're calling a trans person...
She's right. It's not categorically a transphobic slur. It's not categorically a transphobic slur. It can target drag queens, for example, who drag queens who identify as men. Not all drag queens are men, by the way, but drag queens who identify as men. It can target them. In fact, I'm pretty sure that was the original referent, because it was not used. The whole part about trap, for example, the statement is specifically saying, you have been tricked. This is not a woman. However, if it's a trans woman, you're actually mistaken. That is a woman. You have not been trapped. You have not been tricked. So.
Person a trap, yeah, that's
okay.
That can be used as a slur. That.
All right, so like other slurs, so if slurs are if transphobic slurs are used by a non-trans person in a way that is highly suggestive.
No, it's also typically transphobic because, again, transphobes don't mark the distinction between a drag queen and a trans woman. Is the crucial thing.
As to, like, you know, the transphobic slur, but, you know, they say I don't mean it, you know, like I don't mean it that way, then it's fine with you.
I feel like it depends on the context and who it's being said to.
Okay, so yeah, you know, so they.
Why the fuck is Keffals so reasonable? That vacation to Europe did her some good, apparently.
Let's say somebody makes trap-related jokes, and, you know, in a content creator setting, and in general, this person is not trans, but to the average transphobe, they're not going to know one way or the other. So you know, the average transphobe is going to look at that and say, like, look, see, traps admit that they trap. I knew it. And they'll come over here and, you know, to my stream and assume I'm a trap too. I don't know why, Polly, you're saying you're not a trap, because people like you, or people, you know, who are essentially you, are fucking admit it, Polly. Why don't you admit you're out there trapping and trappy trappers and everybody?
So I think what would be a good solution to this is just more education around it. And instead of trying to say that Finn is somehow harmful for doing something that doesn't really have to do with trans people.
So
there's an entire community out there of gender nonconforming men who use the term trap and cross-dress. And
all right, so
honestly, I'm happy for them.
Wait a second. You're happy? Wait. Hold on. You're happy that people further trap tropes?
I'm happy that we live in a year where more men feel that they can do gender nonconforming behaviors and can cross-dress and talk about it publicly. I think that's a sign of progress.
You're talking about one man who, like, happened to discover.
No,
Listen.
I'm not just talking about Finn.
You're talking about one man.
I'm talking about the general.
Okay, but you're talking about one man who happened upon a whole thing.
Once again, this isn't about just Finn. My argument was about the entire community of gender nonconforming men that cross-dress, and they also use the term trap.
Okay, well, I can't speak to every example of everybody using trap tropes, but I got to tell you.
So maybe it would behoove you to not try.
It should be suspect when somebody who is not going to be the target of the transphobic harm of the trap slur, which is a specific slur against trans women. It's a trans misogyny.
No, it's a slur against drag queens, which transphobes group trans women under the category of. Finn is, for all intents and purposes, if he is a cis man who is dressing in women's clothing passably, he's a drag queen, essentially. Or at the very least, he's not far removed from one, if one more particular. I'm not sure how you would be, but, you know. He's targeted by that slur. That's a slur that targets people like him, not just trans women. Which is a distinction that you need to mark. Because you're not a drag queen. You're a trans woman.
Misogynistic slur. So if you're not a trans woman and you're using it, it's going to be suspect. I'm not saying you never could, but certainly
men aren't
certainly
the target of violence.
That, I mean, are you going to keep strawmanning me into next week? So, like,
first of all, you don't know what the term strawman means. Second of all, there have been over 370 attacks on drag events in 2022. That's against gender nonconforming men that cross-dress. How the fuck does that have to do with trans people? We're all in the same fight, and you...
Well, it has to do with trans people because they're being targeted as if they are also a part of the same thing. So transphobes do not mark the distinction between drag queens and trans women, and that's important to keep in mind. So Keffals is a little bit incorrect here, but she's absolutely right to point this out. Gender nonconforming men are being targeted here. People who are not men, for whom it is easier to code as a drag queen, they are being targeted here. Right? There's a whole lot of people being targeted here. Besides just trans people. What puts you into the category of gender nonconforming is that you are not conforming to the gender descriptions of your society. Drag queens do not do this. Cross-dressers definitionally do not do this. That's where the cross part comes in. Obviously.
Picking this fight is harmful for our entire community.
So, Polly...
Is Keffals trans? No, Keffals is a cis woman.
Shut up. Let Finn do all the transphobic shit he wants. That's what your take is.
I didn't say that, but if you want to take it that way, you can.
I mean... Yeah? Fair enough. I mean, okay. Transphobic tropes, I guess, are terrific. You heard it here first.
She didn't say that. She didn't say that.
Well, I'm glad that that's your takeaway from the situation, I guess.
All right. Well, I appreciate the chat.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Have a nice one.
You too.
Polly, you did not win this. You looked so bad here.
All right, that was something else. Oh, dude. All right. That was Keffals. I mean, what the fuck? What are you gonna do?
No, I think the question is, what are you gonna do? Keffals is the most successful trans person in this space, for better or worse. You all but seem to have decided it's worth burning the Demon Mama bridge on account of her being positively disposed towards me, which I think is stupid. What are you doing? What are you doing? Like, what's the goal here? You were gonna bring Keffals on and just yell at her for an hour? Like, what was the point?
Yeah, man, and I thought I had questions about all that shit. Okay, well, I mean, like, what we learned here today is that, I mean, I was right when I...
What?
Sorry, I was right when I came to the conclusion who hung up on who. We didn't hang up on anybody. We're just like, all right, well, I guess that's it then. Okay, you heard it here first. All right. I don't know what to make of that. Like, you know. No free slur ticket for trans through its disco break, everybody. Let's see. Yeah, fuck. I mean, look. Score one for honesty there. Like, I gotta tell you, that's not the first time somebody has ended my discussion with, just let people be transphobic, brother. You know what I mean? Like, someone in Keffals' chat just said you were a TERF. I know. Well, people are saying that.
She didn't say just let people be transphobic. She said they weren't being transphobic. Trap as a slur does not just refer to trans people. It refers to drag queens as well, and cross-dressers generally, who are not all drag queens, by the way. It's not just yours, unfortunately. I'm sorry. There's nothing really to say here. Why are you acting smug like this is a victory? You look like a fool. Polly, just stop. Just don't do this. When you get a large person as an audience, okay, who's on side, not someone who's merely toxic, someone who engages with your community, who your community is engaged with, who is important. Do something with it. You're gonna take Keffals down. Take Keffals down. I don't know what the point of this was. You didn't beat Keffals in an argument. You just acted smug and condescending and dismissive to someone who was making a lot more sense than you in this conversation. Your accusations against Finn were undermotivated, and that's being charitable. You were belligerent without any provocation, by the looks of it. And it doesn't matter. You can drum up like, well, no, we had Keffals seemed sort of dismissive in DMs or on Twitter or something. Optics are everything. You are in a visual medium. There's nobody handing out points for being technically right. If you are correct and you have made the better position look terrible, that's on you. Within reason. Like, Keffals was allowing you to speak. She was shutting up when you went off on a tirade. She didn't even fight you for space. When you said shut the fuck up or like fuck off and let me finish it, she let you. And you spoke more than her. Careful, Sunday she'll probably do another 11 streams on you. I'm still standing from the last 11. I think we'll be okay. I think we'll survive. Oh yeah, she did like, I don't think it was 11. I think it was like, she did like 10 days of streams on me or something collectively. It was insane. Like just endless. Just endless. And it'd be one thing if I was like somebody of scale, right? Because then you can understand, okay, taking me down makes sense. There's value in that. But I'm not of scale. I have like 11.8 thousand subscribers. It's nothing. It's nothing. For me, it's huge. It was a massive jump, but it's nothing. So it looks petty and like your priorities are out of whack. What are you doing? Anyways, I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to finish up with the thing that I said we were going to finish up with. We're going to start looking over some of Short Fight Otaku's additional political content. We're going to generate the beginnings of a roadmap towards his total destruction. Because he does what I do, but very badly. And if anybody wants to call in before we begin that, you are welcome. All right, I'll be right back with coffee, hopefully. See you in a few. You guys talking about Demon Slayer in the chat? Mugen Train sucked. Entertainment District was good, though. Demon Slayer sucks until the beginning of Season 2. Well, the end of Season 1, like the very end. And then it sucks again. Sorry, then it's okay for the beginning of the Mugen Train arc, and then it sucks again. It's just stupid. And then the Entertainment District is just a joy. And it has one of the best openings of any anime ever. No contest. It's flamboyant and epic at the same time. It's a rare combination. Alright, we have some guests waiting, so we'll pull them in. We'll have some chats, and then we'll move on. Hey, Citra, I'm going to pull all three of you in at once. Are you okay with that? I'm just asking you because you were here first.
I'm fine, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Alora, Mike, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Hey, Sunday.
Hey, Alora, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Make sure all of your your audio is up so you're not drowned out.
Do I sound audible?
You are actually the most audible one of all. Do you even want to like lower your mic a little bit if you can?
I cannot. It's AirPods. I
Perfect.
can
Then
change my voice settings.
Then you're off the hook. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
All right. So what's on your mind? All three of you.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to bring up something that my friend Mix Dizzy was talking about earlier in the Demon Mama server.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Calvin Guerra and his effect on the trans-mass community?
I'm not.
Okay. Are you familiar with the term trans-trender?
Yes.
Okay. So, Calvin Guerra was one of the big people that was pushing the trans-trender shit, basically making fun of trans people on YouTube. There were a bunch of stuff that went into it, but basically, people that didn't pass well enough for Calvin, he basically terrorized an entire generation of trans-mass people for not passing well enough. And Dizzy brought up the point that basically, if we're policing how well people pass or stuff like this, I'm probably butchering this argument. And I'm tired from the day 3 of Demon Mama's Calling.
That's fair.
But basically, but basically, that this would be this is basically approaching the transgender discourse from the trans femme side this time. I don't believe Poli is anywhere near as bad as Calvin is, and Dizzy wouldn't go there either. But this is basically this is a pit stop on the road to there, I believe. And I think Dizzy would. Dizzy in chat, is that about right? Yeah. So that's roughly the argument that I want to present. Dizzy is watching, and it could probably present it better, but didn't want to barge in because Dizzy's new to the cathedral and didn't know how things went. So
The three of us were speaking earlier. This may or may not at least rhyme or dovetail with what you just said, but Polly's argument was incredibly gatekeepy. It's like, who do we allow in this community? You know, who do we? And it's like Finster seems like a threat to Polly's conception of what the trans community is. And what I was saying earlier is the trans community is incredibly diverse, and I don't know as how many people really realize how diverse the trans community is as a community. We share certain things in common, but not everything. Our politics runs from Caitlyn Jenner to me, you know.
Yeah.
And it's I think this whole notion it's almost like what I was hearing throughout this whole discourse, both here in this stream tonight with where Polly was going on. It's like it's the flip side of uh, you know, of the trans agenda. We don't have one, except leave us the fuck alone. And it's weird to me when trans people try to police uh, the people we engage with. It just doesn't seem like something you can do.
I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but I do have a trans agender.
There you go. That's fine.
A trans age.
Listen,
Well, what
yeah,
does that what does that
somebody
mean
do have any-
specifically? Because I understand the concept of agender, which I think is a gender. So I'm a little bit confused by that, to be honest.
It's a plan on. It's a pun because agender is basically the gender void, the lack of any and all of gender, and
I
yeah,
see.
just
Oh.
plan words.
a
Yes.
gender.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
that's
do
my
you
take
have
on the whole
any
situation.
responses
And
so
and
far?
also-
Okay, one at a time. Sidra, you first.
yeah, exactly, and it gets old. It just being I transitioned 24 years ago, and it's wow, look at this, same thing, different day.
So we're basically all. There's no agreement with Polly in any of this from anybody here.
No.
Not from
really.
me.
Like I can almost understand where she's coming from to a degree. And so my theory, just kind of based on her overall tenor in the conversation, and this is something I've occasionally experienced, but have the kind of self-knowledge to realize that I'm being maladaptive in doing so, is like getting stressed out when you see cis people like problematizing gender in a way that doesn't involve trans people, because it's like you already know that trans people are in this kind of tenuous struggle to control narratives about ourselves, right? So when you see cis people doing gender stuff that isn't that doesn't square with what we normally think of as a typical cis experience, that I could imagine someone seeing that as a bit of a threat, in that it is chaotic, right? It is operating in a field that trans people have no inherent control over, but it feels like is going to impact us, but we have no like automatic stake to intervene and be like, well, no, but we can't take it past this certain line. Like we have to trust this group of cis people to self police to not do transphobia, and I think they do that well, especially because a lot of because gender non-conforming people generally like recognize that they have a natural basis for solidarity with trans people, but you have to trust people who aren't trans but who are queer or who are doing gender nonconformity to not reproduce transphobia, and I can see how that would be hard for a lot of people, and it seems like Polly is just especially struggling with the idea that a popular cis crossdresser could possibly not be doing a transphobia by having a platform.
And on top of that, I believe that gender nonconformity, from the perspective of someone that wants to have gender liberation, which in my definition is water down all gender roles to the point of being useless. But all gender nonconformity is an objective good, and we should encourage it. And if a cis guy who is the sissiest guy who ever sissed, who is straight and not an egg, not now, not ever, wants to be a professional femboy.
I say I resemble that remark. No, sorry, go on.
Wants to dress up, it dresses, long hair, and just be the femmiest boy that ever lived. Go for it. you rock. Keep doing what you're doing, with the caveat that we need to do a lot more. Well, okay. Not we specifically queer people, but just people in general need to do a lot more to try to curb the weird, creepy horniness that people have for femboys, and that, yeah, that's weird. It's
I
out
don't. I
of
don't. I
control.
don't. Look. I'm kind of with Keffals on this. I don't think it's an inherently bad thing if people, for whatever reason, happen to find, provided it doesn't like inflect how they treat people, to prefer trans women or trans men or whatever, because like obviously there's going to be distinctions between them. We have the label for a reason.
Mhm.
Same thing with the femboys thing. Like I don't like how, as a consequence of the kind of stridence that we're seeing in this conversation, there's this growing tendency to treat like feminine men, or I think the femboy thing is somewhat distinct from feminine men, but I think it's similar in a number of relevant senses, as if that's somehow something purely fetishistic or toxic.
I was not trying to.
No, I'm not suggesting that you were. I'm just saying, as an aside. Sorry, I should have been more clear about that.
That was me trying to denounce the fetishistic things that people try to put
which is fair, yeah. Like treating it as a fetish object is also gross, but
Yeah, it's gross, but you know, these are things kind of beyond our control.
yes.
People will do what they do. But the thing that disturbs me a little bit, you know, if there's like, if you're talking about where Polly's coming from, it seems to me is actually destructive of community building writ large.
Yeah.
In that you're putting yourself in this position of saying, well, I don't accept this genderqueer expression on the part of a cis guy, and I see it as a threat to me.
Yeah.
And I don't see why that should be. It's in the absence of demonstrated evidence that it is in fact a mocking of who you are as a person, or you know, making fun of, using it as a piece of comedy, using it as a trope, using it as a tool towards fetishism.
Yes.
In the absence of that kind of evidence, you know, I think that Finster's actually doing the world a favor by being who he is, you know? And I think that was Keppel's main point in the whole argument. It's like, hey, it's not for trans people to police gender the way cis people do. It's not for us to do that, because we've already transgressed that boundary in one way or another. Whether we are, like myself, a binary trans woman with years of experience being so, I'm very comfortable with who I am. And I'm a little disturbed by someone being so uncomfortable with who they are that they're willing to shut people out of their own expressions of gender in the wider world. Because I think that, you know, if somebody can do that and do it well and do it with a good heart, that's fine.
Which was assuming is what Finn is doing, and like I can suspend judgment on that, yeah. But we can leave that aside because she didn't really specify that. So it's I don't know. I've heard things to the effect from other people before this that Poli has, and I don't want to cast aspersions in case this has been incorrect, but I've heard other people say something to the effect that she has some issue with gender nonconforming people. So I don't know if that might be a factor here as well, but I don't want to speculate too hard.
It's hard not to draw that conclusion from everything she said in that discussion, right? Like,
I want to give people the benefit of the doubt and allow them to be inconsistent. Because sometimes,
It's just
yeah,
like we have to ask what are the consequences of so let's not impugn any motivations onto Polly, right? Like let's just talk about what are the consequences of the things Polly was saying to Keffals in that discussion, right? The consequence is that we're telling people that they shouldn't be gender nonconforming publicly while having a platform if they're not trans or whatever, like that, or that it is really easy for those people to do harm to trans people by being gender nonconforming in public, which Keffals obviously disagrees with, which I think the three of us calling in right now also all disagree with. Like, it is good, right? It breaks down the phobia of transphobia, right? Like, the thing that cis people could be scared of is like the idea that, oh, they're coming for my gender next, right? Like, oh, if people are free to experiment with gender however much they want, then like that's going to affect me as a cis person. But like, we should be promoting examples of cis people who are freely experimenting with gender representation and still being cis at the end of it.
yeah.
Like that's great. And we should be highlighting examples of the possibility of doing that and it not destroying your life and forcing you to be a woman if you actually want to be a man. Like you can be a man and
I
present
agree.
as a woman often, and that's great and wonderful. And I think we should be encouraging that wherever it occurs.
Well, I think like a major part too, and this is something that really plays into this, is the idea that making mistakes, like experimenting and figuring out what is the most appropriate mode of dress for you, or even just spontaneously trying stuff out without that strong motivation behind it, is super dangerous and will destroy. Like that's a transphobic trope, I think, if we adopted the loose sense that Polly's using it in, and treating that as something that's a lot more benign and a lot less like weighty, because it really should be. It's only particularly weighty because we're so insistent on the reverse, that people who actually do have like a certain need for that, or on the flip side, people who feel a certain need for that because they're being pigeonholed by the opposite into identities that are not them and which are very constricting. Like that makes the whole thing a million times easier for everyone.
Indeed.
Yeah. And not just trans people. So yeah.
Exactly.
If I could break in for just 1 second, I need to go to bed since it's been a long day for me with the call-in today.
Have a good night, Alora. You're welcome back anytime.
Good night.
I just want to say, Mixed Dizzy is in the waiting room and has some really good perspectives on this.
All right,
so.
we'll pull them in too. All right, have a good night, Alora. Thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks.
Take care.
Sorry, Sidger, you were saying something.
Nice talking. Yeah. It's just the Polly seems to be looking at, from what she was saying, looking at the whole thing through the lens of what about the transphobes? She said that several times. Well, what about transphobes? How will transphobes view this stuff? And it's like, I don't give a fuck. Transphobes come to transphobe.
Well, they're already transphobes. It's like
they're already there. It's like, that to me is not the point. It's how do you quench the impulse to develop transphobic ideas? And if you believe that the way to quench transphobic ideas is to quench expressions of gender nonconforming behavior on the part of assigned at birth male and assigned at birth female, then you're basically buying into keeping those structures in place. And it doesn't seem to me that that's all that great.
It's very much blaming the victim for the abuse.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not the fault of some guy in a dress that some chetty piece of shit calls trans women traps. It's the chetty piece of shit's fault. And you're doing the whole, abused sibling who throws the other sibling under the bus and hopes that mommy and daddy will treat me better. To blame your queer siblings for the abuse. You blame the abuser.
Hi, Dizzy, by the way.
Hi!
Hey. Alora was saying you had something interesting to say.
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
We'll take it away.
My whole thing is that I think gender is a fuck and life is short and we should do what makes us happy. And there is no clear line or distinction between cis and trans besides what labels you pick up. Because, like, I have a friend group, we're all assigned female at birth, but some of us are men, and some of us are women, and some of us are me. And we share a lot of experiences and feelings, but they're all on a spectrum of basically cis to very trans. Some trans men are just very manly men, and they're just like, I was born a man, I was always a man, where the fuck are my balls? They have no questions or doubts, and some people they take time to come to that. They have to process through it, and they, in their manhood, are more non-binary. They're not entirely into the whole I have to be a man. They're like, I'm a man, but I'm like also a little bit fruity and gay. And then there are me, and I don't give a shit. I am whatever I feel like in the moment. This is why I identify as agender if I have to put a label on it, because I don't like being put in a box. I like being able to grab the labels that make me feel happy. And there's people like I have a cisgender friend who is a woman with a beard. She has polycystic ovarian syndrome, so her body has naturally high testosterone. I have my best friend is also a cis woman with polycystic ovarian syndrome, but she does not like the high level of testosterone, and she is on medication to reduce it. It's the same medication that trans women take. My other friend, though, loves her beard, loves the testosterone in her body, told her doctor, I like the way I am and I don't want to change. And she's kind of like, she's one of those tomboy women who's kind of like on the verge of transness and cisness. And there's a blur in there that's very important to me, because I have met so many people to whom this blurry area is valuable, to whom this blurry area represents a relationship to gender that pushes against cis heteronormative standards. And whenever I see people who start putting up gates and walls as to how you can approach that and how you can transgress, I find harm, because that harm was done to me. I was gate kept out of queer spaces for a long time because I wasn't a binary trans man, and I was told constantly there are trans men and there are trans women and everybody else is just cis.
And
so
that was the huge energy I was feeling from Polly's entire thing. It's like,
and it's
total gatekeeping shit, and it was like, hey, look, and I'm, I am. I've found my peace with gender after years of practice, and I'm fine now. And I think it's important that people be able to explore that sort of thing and not have to worry so much over this stuff. I mean,
yeah, we need the process of our transgendering to be easier, right? Like, if you think about it from like a Judith Butlery perspective, right? Like, so like what trans people are doing in enacting their own gender is they're like doing a performance that it's contingent, it's open to failure, all the characteristics of gender that Butler describes. And we rely on other people to help us complete that performance, right? We have to have people gender us correctly for us to like succeed in doing our gender, right? For me to be a woman, or for me to feel like a woman, I guess, for me to feel like I'm succeeding at enacting womanhood, have to have people agree to do so when I ask them to use she/her pronouns for me, which they do, which is great. Even though I don't pass in the conventional sense, like I still have very masculine features. I have a deep voice. I'm very tall, but I also present feminine in a lot of ways. And I think the more that gender nonconformity is out there and happening, the easier that process gets, right? Because it, like the thing you're coming up against when you're doing that process, and when you're asking other people to gender you in a way that may not conform with a binary view of things, is you're coming up against how entrenched are their notions of what a woman looks like and what a man looks like.
Yeah.
So the more that people are out there problematizing those things and blurring those lines and making those categories less and less coherent, the easier it is for us to be like, I'm a woman because I say I'm a woman, and I would like you to join me in that reality. So yeah, I'm really happy that there's like a popular femboy streamer. That's fucking awesome.
And when I was identifying as a woman, I was constantly blurring gender lines. People would constantly look at me and do a double take because I didn't conform. I was uncomfortable conforming. And this is also one reason I, as a trans adult, am in some way responsible. I'm being vague here because I'm trying not to dox this person. They're a trans femme minor who I am their go-to supportive trans adult. And
very progressive of the mining industry to allow trans people. Sorry, as you were.
Fuck, where was I?
That was so stupid. I apologize. Keep going.
It was funny though. It was funny, and that's important.
Yeah, and Galaxy Quest. Sorry, as you were.
So I feel very strongly about the ways that femininity was pressed on me, and the way my experience was penalized. My expression was penalized. I had church ladies gossiping about my hairy legs to my best friend and telling me that, ooh, Jesse really needs to shave those. They're so gross. I'm like, fuck you, bitch. So I feel personally, as somebody who grew up living as a girl, who has a trans femme child that they're trying to support, and who has a lot of trans femme friends, that femininity is often really misogynistic. A lot of the ideas that we expect of women are shit. And cis women have been pushing back against this for so long. Cis women and AFAB people, we've been pushing back against this for so long, to be allowed to be topless, braless, to wear sports bras, to not be expected to wear heels and makeup and be pretty. So I don't like expecting all of this passing from trans women. If you're transitioning to be a real woman, you get to be whatever the fuck kind of woman you want. You get to be like my mom and go to the store in men's sweatpants and comfy sneakers because you're shopping for your disabled adult who is reliant on you and needs frozen dinners, otherwise they'll just lie on the couch all day hungry and starve.
I found the
Watch
key to
me,
passing.
by the way.
Yeah. Well,
I'm a little bit pathetic.
Look, I'm 69. You see my avatar. It's like you can see how I dress. I'm a professional sailor. It's like I don't fem it up particularly, but I just sort of am me. I'm just me. And to me, the secret to passing is to be you.
Yes.
It's easy. It really is, and it's just it. I don't need to do anything particularly weird to go out in the world and be accepted as who I am. The gender that I present, it's like, but it takes a while to figure out how to make that happen, to be comfortable and to do all of this stuff. It takes a certain level of experience and life experiences. Like you worry so much, and I just think that Polly ain't there yet.
Yeah, and
Like, this is a
a lot
threat.
of
This is a threat, and I think that the for whether you're a guy or a chick, a lot of that, a lot of the stress around this issue that trans people, the fact of our existence, present is, oh no, it's possible that you can. There are people that are doing this. It just is it's like a weird threat to something deep
to comfort, I think,
people.
familiarity,
Yeah.
right? Like people have
Yeah.
this fixed notion of what genders look like to them, and anything that troubles that is confusing and thus threatening. Like people just kind of resist change, right? Like that in a very simple way.
And it's really quite
At least
irrational.
sometimes,
I mean, you can.
not everyone, but that I think
It's
that's
really.
at play in a lot of
Yeah,
situations.
there's
it
also
is, and
that
Okay,
fundamental
hang on,
terror.
hang on. One sec. Cedric was trying to get a word in.
Sorry.
it is, and it's really weird when you get into a situation where you're sitting, like I had this one experience. I'm sitting at this table with 3 U.S. sailing judges for a regatta, and I'm sitting there, and one of them, this was like 2 years ago. One of them starts going off on what do we do about trans women in sports? Blah 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 blah. It's going on and on and on. It's jeez, and he goes. It's clearly hostile to the notion in sailing. For fuck's sake, I mean, it's a kind of a co-ed sport anyway, so who gives a shit? And so finally, I looked at him. I go, "Have you ever met a trans person?" He goes, "No." And I said, "Well, you have now." It's just
Yeah.
it's just so stupid. People are afraid of the trans person. The construct of a trans person that they've developed in their head. That reality doesn't seem to matter.
It's also
Like
that
oh, sorry,
sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah, like I work at a family-owned restaurant in like a rural community outside of a not very big Canadian city. And I work exclusively with dudes in my kitchen, right? And I'm out trans woman. And like uh I can't make any progress on customers, right? Like I don't use the woman's washroom when there's customers around because all the like rural cis ladies are just like, oh, they don't even see my face. They just see the 6'4" person in the bathroom and they're like, am I in the wrong one? What? Which I have definitely contemplated just like asking them like, well, are you? You tell me. I don't know. But I am not quite that self-assured, I guess. But like my coworkers, to their credit, have been like really cool about trans stuff, even when they wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't like. It has been revealed to me, over almost a year into working there, that like, my boss, like, a lot of his friends are really into Matt Walsh and stuff, but like, he has literally never misgendered me once. And the same goes for the rest of the cooks. Like, a lot of them are fairly conservative in general, but they just see, like, it's very interesting. Like, they see a woman in a male dominated space who like doesn't really, especially when I'm in work clothes, because work clothes are just awful, and I can't wear earrings and I can't wear necklaces and I can't have my hair down.
I'm alive.
So they see someone who's like, there are not very many like visual indicators that clearly anchor me as like either gender, but they're just like, even when it's like super busy and we're just yelling back and forth and stuff, like they won't flip up. Like they see me as a woman, and it's really interesting. And it like, I kind of think about that a lot when I'm seeing all this like very precious discourse about like, well, what will happen if X and whatever. It's like, well, that doesn't really matter. Like it kind of just comes down to like, I don't know. I don't actually know where I'm going with this at this point. It's just interesting, like seeing people who you'd expect to be weird about it, like, and a lot of my like the front of house staff will not know I'm trans, and then someone will tell them, and then but like I've never had a problem with it. Like no one's ever been actively shitty about it. Like they're just because they're always being introduced to it by someone who accepts it, who isn't me. I never have to do any of this myself. All my coworkers just do it for me. Like there just has not yet been a situation where someone has rejected that. They just see that everyone else around them is already accepting me as a woman, and they're like, well, whatever. I guess I'm just going to do that. Like it's just really interesting. It's kind of changed how I think about some of this stuff.
It's not the bystander effect. I'm gonna call it the lemming effect. It's this is what we're doing. Okay, we're doing this. Cool. And that's like one thing that happens a lot is that cis people will be afraid of the concept of a trans person until they meet one, and then it makes sense. Mossy off. I'm sorry, my dog really wants attention. There's also the existential horror of, oh God, what if I ma'am a sir or I sir a ma'am? That's one of the things that being ambiguous terrifies cis people. You come in and they freeze up and they tense and they go, oh no, I'm about to do a faux pas. If I do this wrong, what do I do? And people panic. And so that's one of the fun things about being non-binary is that you get to be the chaos in the machine.
I like how you're like all against like strict binary distinctions and whatnot, but you just intuitively assumed it was a faux pas, not a faux pas.
God damn it!
That is the end of this conversation. You're all going away, so I can finish the stream and go to bed.
All right.
Perfect interjection someday.
Fair.
Do you have any
Totally
thoughts
fair.
on the conversation? I'm curious. Before I'm happy to leave, but I want to hear what you think about any of this.
No. Have a good night, everyone.
Right.
No,
Good night.
thanks for coming on. This was great and interesting. You're all welcome back, of course, whenever. Unless you displease me or if I forget. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night, Mr. President.
Does anybody have a channel they want to show? You're welcome to do so. Okay.
I got a YouTube channel, but I've got exactly two things on there. One was a New Year's Eve stream, and one is actually a talk I gave to Methodist Church on Trans Day of Remembrance, and I'm rather proud of. But anyway, the
that
only
could be
two
interesting.
videos up there. Yeah, it's
Not to say the art isn't interesting. It's just like,
yeah.
Good luck driving my traffic to it.
Atheist trans woman talks to Methodist congregation on TDO. But anyway,
Nice.
and I get around to various other places on the internets here and there. I've been on a transatlantic calling program a couple of times and stuff, but whatever.
And Allura, of course, is Demon Mama's mod and was responsible for doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, almost all of it, really, for the big fundraiser stream we did that I'm still recovering from. And sorry, I interrupted somebody.
Allura is fantastic, by the way.
Yes, they are.
I'm the Allura fan club.
Just you?
It's
that's impossible because I am the Allura fan club.
I have to add more people. I'm inviting you into my shtick.
Nice.
Yeah, you're gonna charge me money for it, though, aren't you?
No, I'm just gonna ask for compliments.
You got me hooked. So
that's in like 2 years.
I just need you to pump my chair a little bit. I'm really short. It's kind of hard. Everybody's so tall.
I want to go to bed.
I'm sorry.
All of you go away.
I'm
you. Sorry, go on.
Tall person. Yeah, my Twitch is Unsunui. UNESEULENUIT. I'll type it in chat as well.
Yeah, do that. Say that one more time. You went a bit quiet there.
Insomnie. It's French.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
the
I don't
national
think saying
anthem
that out loud is actually going to help us
of
spell out stuff.
revolutionary Burkina Faso. Thomas
What,
Sankara
Sunday? You
forever.
don't know how to spell French?
No. All right.
Well done.
Oh wait,
Ciao.
Okay.
I'm actually from Quebec originally, and my
Well,
French is atrocious.
Quebecois
That's
French is a
funny.
different beast anyway.
All I know is half of my relatives talk like this at family gatherings. It's all right.
Sounds
Wait.
delightful, frankly. All
All
right.
right.
Oh, they're lovely.
You're trying to get us
Bye.
out of your hair.
Yes,
so
I am.
peace
Go
out.
away.
Bye.
Bye. All right. The normies are gone. Now we can do the cool things. It's 1:49. We can do this quickly. So, once again, Short Fed Otaku. He made a terrible, terrible response to a passingly okay video by Second Thought, and in the process, he alerted me to the existence of a long backlog of very, very, very bad poli-sci videos that he has made, which fall right into my wheelhouse. And so, he is going to be our new academic agent for a little while, because why the hell not? And he has a video here called, why is this not showing up? Show up, damn you. Oh, there it is. I don't know why it's where my face is. How I do research. So we're going to watch this quickly. Then we're going to go through his stuff, and we're going to work out an itinerary. Which ones we're going to respond to, and we're going to spend a week preparing for each one. And that's going to be in addition to like the other video essays, because this is going to be, we'll be able to do research streams. It'll be great. It'll be great. And it's that perfect dovetailing of blood sports and solid academics, which is the narrow, sticky place where I thrive. That is I regret that phrasing terribly. Anyways, this is Short Fed Otaku and how he does research, which he does not. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's the worst.
Hello, my friends. The title of this video should be self-explanatory, but in case you don't get it, this is just going to be a brief primer on how I research things, because I don't necessarily want you to think like me whenever I make videos or I do streams, but I do want you to at least learn the processes by which I come to the conclusions that I come to. Because, in my opinion, finding the truth is more important than any sort of political expediency. Neither the left nor the right, no political camp, no ideological camp, no religion, nothing, has a monopoly on what the truth is. Lots of people say that they do. If they say, my view is always correct, my tribe knows what the truth is all the time, they're trying to sell you something. Whether it's the far left, far right, doesn't matter. So I just want to take two examples from either side of the aisle and just show you how to really get the truth out of them. Here's the first one. This one I actually did live on the Weekly Sip a few weeks back, but I figured I'd just, do it again just to show you my thought processes on when I try to find what the truth is. So this is from Vice News. Far-right extremists are threatening to execute doctors at a children's hospital. The viral Twitter account Libs of TikTok promoted a lie about gender-affirming care at the hospital, and now doctors are getting death threats. Well, okay. So let's see what the claim is. Boston Children's Hospital said on Tuesday that its staff has faced a flood of violent threats and harassment sparked by a false claim made by the viral Libs of TikTok account. The account tweeted on August 11th that Boston's Children's Hospital is now offering gender-affirming hysterectomies for young girls. The claim has been widely debunked by fact-checking groups, but as is typical in anti-trans rhetoric, facts rarely matter, and the claims were shared widely on right-wing social media accounts. As a result, the hospital and its staff have faced a torrent of abuse. They've received hostile internet activity, phone calls, harassing emails, including threats of violence towards clinicians and staff. And then the article gets into the various death threats and threats of assault made by people on the internet.
Let's see here. Let's zoom in. Let's see. Demons like this do not deserve to breathe, quote-unquote. Crimes against humanity equal death. One Telegram user wrote under a link to one of the articles repeating the false claims. Quote, these people are psychopaths and should be locked up, unquote. Another wrote, on both platforms, the doctors and hospital staff were referred to as pedophiles and groomers, attacks that have become a mainstay of Republican orthodoxy in recent months. That's hard to dispute. Reich's account, which has over 1 million followers, has been at the forefront of the right's anti-LGBTQ campaign, which has also targeted schools and libraries in recent months. It's the same tactic that's been deployed for years by anti-abortion groups and is still being used in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. Twitter did not immediately respond to Vice News requests for comment on whether Rychik's latest tweet broke its rules.
On the one hand, I get it. You shouldn't be getting those. On the other hand, it is just the internet. It's like, cyberbullying ain't real. Turn it off. You know the quote at this point. But let's actually see what the truth is, because this article at this point focuses only on the fallout. But what's the truth of the claim? Is it true that Boston Children's Hospital is now offering gender-affirming hysterectomies for young girls? Now, the claim has been widely debunked by fact-checking groups. Let's see those fact-checkers. Yeah, there's a political fact saying false, but I mean, PolitiFact, they're kind of biased as it is. Like, there's always the memes. Oh, it's been debunked! And then you look at the debunking and it's just like fucking stupid. So we don't necessarily need to trust this. This is at least one data point, but it's not the whole truth. So let's actually look at it ourselves. The first thing that I would do when trying to find the truth of a claim like this is to look at the quote itself. Let's find the original tweet. Oh, at this point, libs of TikTok might actually be taken down. Nope, it's still there. And the tweet is actually right here. Boston Children's Hospital is now offering gender-affirming hysterectomies for young girls. So let's watch this video and see what's actually going on here, okay?
Gender-affirming hysterectomy is very similar to most hysterectomies that occur. A hysterectomy itself is the removal of the uterus, the cervix, which is the opening of the uterus, and the fallopian tubes, which are attached to the sides of the uterus. Some gender-affirming hysterectomies will also include the removal of the ovaries, but that's technically a separate procedure called a bilateral oophorectomy. And not every gender-affirming hysterectomy includes that, and people who are getting gender-affirming hysterectomies do not have to have their ovaries removed.
Okay, so that video didn't actually say what Libs of TikTok said that it did. That was a video describing what a gender-affirming hysterectomy is, but said nothing about young girls. Maybe they're making a jump in logic here because the video did come from the Boston Children's Hospital, and that is a point. But let's continue to dig and see what's actually going on. Special report, Boston Children's Hospital boasts a full suite of surgical options for transgender teens, has 90 videos promoting surgeries to youth on their YouTube page. Co-director allows vaginoplasty on 17-year-olds, but hints at even younger. Okay, let's see what this is all about. So when I see this sentence, I really want to know where the hints at even younger comes from. Where's the source of this stuff? We have to look this up. So let's head in. Boston Children's Hospital gleefully encourages surgical, pharmaceutical gender transition for teens. Dr. Oren Ganor, co-director of the Boston Children's Center for Gender Surgery, said in an email to WBUR that he was slightly flexible when it comes to the age of males seeking genital surgery. It's a video series. This is their YouTube channel. Oh, they deleted the playlist. Yep, here's the channel. Not much engagement on these videos, but I mean, that's fine. They're here for, they're not here to be YouTubers. I'm not sure if these are, promoted to children. They seem to be like straightforward videos on information. Boston Children's Hospital founded the Gender Multi-Specialty Service program in 2007 and welcomes patients as young as 3 years old. That sounds kind of crazy. I assume they're not doing surgeries on people 3 years old. At GEMS, our mission is to assess and care for gender-diverse children, teens, and young adults. Young adults makes me think that it's not just children going to the children's hospital, that it's over 18s. GEMS provides a variety of options for medical transition that include prescribing puberty blockers, testosterone, estrogen, plastic surgery from their surgery center. Okay. For children 9 and under, the hospital helps facilitate a social transition that prepares them for individualized treatment plans that can include puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and chest surgeries. Chest surgeries are available at age 15. Well, okay. There's one thing that I disagree with right off the bat. Surgery should be coming at 18, not 15. So I disagree with this, but we still haven't reached Libs of TikTok's claim yet.
Why? That's kind of silly. Why 18? People can drive a car at 16. Risk the lives of a bunch of people they encounter every single day. People can go into the workforce prior to that. It's not relevant to the subject of the video itself, but that's kind of a strange thing to just assert dogmatically. Magically at 18, you suddenly, your soul enters your body or something. This is silly.
Yet that hysterectomies are being offered to young girls. Genital surgeries require several letters of support from the patient's healthcare providers and must have lived as their identified gender for only 12 months. For phalloplasty,
12 months is a long time.
And metoidoplasty, they ask that you be at least 18 years old. 18 seems reasonable. At that point, you're an adult. You do what you want with your body. Patients only 17 years old can obtain a vaginoplasty. But Dr. Oren Ganor, co-director of Boston Children's Center, hinted in an email that children even younger can be operated on. Gnor said in an email that he is slightly flexible when it comes to the age of males seeking genital surgery.
Body dysphoria can be extremely intense and can make people suicidal far below the age of 17. You know what kills people more than a vaginoplasty does? Suicide. Like this is kind of a no-brainer. If a professional has determined, someone who is in the best position to know, has determined to the best of their judgment this is an appropriate treatment to prevent somebody from suffering from grievous psychological and physical harm downstream from the psychological. These are not radically distinct from each other. They are continuous. Then it's an appropriate treatment. Things don't cease to matter because their root is psychological. That's a silly presumption.
He adds that the policy has not been finalized because of the issue around consent for sterilization.
What does it require to access that operation at age 16? I don't know. I would assume probably something very similar, just letters from professionals verifying that in their best judgment this is an appropriate course.
Which is a part of the procedure. Let's see the standards of care model they're talking about. Professional Association for Transgender Health. Oh, this is a big ass document. We gotta look at this, don't we? Fuck. English version 2012. Loading in. Can we just search for 18? Past page 18. Surgery, maybe? Surgery, page 54. Active health. Voice therapy. Surgery. Criteria for breast or chest surgery. Creation of a male chest in FTM patients. Persistent, well-documented gender dysphoria. Capacity to make fully informed decision and to consent. Age of majority in the given country. If significant medical or mental health concerns are present.
If younger, follow the SOC for children and adolescents. So there are terms.
They must be reasonably well controlled. Breast augmentation and MTF. Same things. Persistent, well-documented gender dysphoria. Capacity to make an informed decision. Age of majority. And these all seem to be the same. They all say age of majority in a given country. So if we were to go back, when we have chest surgeries available at the age of 15, that's bad. It's not what Libs of TikTok talks about in that tweet, but it is bad. And
well, no, they're available in basically exceptional cases where a doctor recommends it for this particular case, and probably very conservatively.
Patients 17 years old can obtain a vaginoplasty. That's also bad. It has to be 18 across the board.
Why?
And when he says he is...
Why is that also bad? We've established, presumably, if they're getting the treatment, they have a letter from a doctor saying this is confirmed to be causing them psychological harm. Psychological harm tending to self-harm, potentially. As well as heightened levels of stress. All these things can kill you. Why on earth is the bare fact that the blind forces of nature bestowed upon them a certain biological trajectory? Why does that anoint this as the thing which must be maintained despite the recorded cost by a medical professional up until the age of 18? What is the logic there? What's the logic there? That doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't... If this was an intersex person, this would not be an issue at all. At all. This person just wouldn't care.
Slightly flexible, this is a serious problem. So there's a lot of things happening right now at this Boston Children's Hospital that I disagree with. And in fact, the standard of care also disagrees with this stuff. But the original claim was not about chest surgeries at 15 or puberty blockers at 9, vaginoplasties at 17. The original claim was gender-affirming hysterectomies for young girls. There does not seem to be any proof of that. There's proof of other wrongdoing, and if Libs of TikTok wanted to be factually correct, they could have reported on that wrongdoing.
Okay, so how he does research is he looks at an article, and then he sees if the article says what somebody claims the article says it says. It's like, great, okay. Maybe that's the standard his audience is operating at, where this is like a novel thing, where you don't just absorb uncritically everything that Libs of TikTok says, but
they didn't. They chose to say gender-affirming hysterectomies for young girls, which does not seem to be the truth. Now, the final point is that, oh, it's a children's hospital. Well, of course, if they're going after kids, it's not adults getting it there, dude. I saw people in the weekly SIP chat actually say that quite a bit. The only thing I have to say to that is that a while ago, the Boston Children's Hospital extended the age range from 18 to 21, saying that's a little help for those college years. Even though it is a children's hospital, it still has no problem treating young adults from 18 to 21, and sometimes even treats full adults that need...
That's a good way to put that, Dirt Person. So the possible harm to an imaginary cis person, thus being the trans youth, who's being presumed to be very likely potentially mistaken until the magical age of 18 when they gain, when they achieve Hegelian absolute spirit and godlike understanding of their own identity, is more important than the real harm to a trans person, which is the trans youth not being able to access treatment, which is resulting in them going through male or female puberty, being saddled with irrevocable biological changes, and having to deal with untreated dysphoria for an extensive period of time through their most angst-filled years. Like,
need certain types of care. Despite the chest surgeries at 15, despite the vaginoplasty at 17, both of which are really bad things, this specific claim, gender-affirming hysterectomies for young girls, seems to be false.
This isn't doing research. You verified a claim on Twitter against the contents of an article they were citing. Everybody does this. Some of them do it badly, some of them don't. This isn't doing research. I don't care about this. Let's go to his actual channel. What have we got here? So, a lot of Rings of Power stuff. I guess Black Hell's really offended him that much. We've gone over the hearing both sides. We have the pronoun problem. This would bear a response. The moral legitimacy of the minority. What is this about?
Enlightenment philosophies.
Oh god, it's gonna be bad.
Set in... During the most recent weekly sip, I read this astonishing article. Non-binary Romeo and Juliet set in Nazi Germany apologizes for omitting Jews from the casting call. A production of Romeo and Juliet for non-binary performers, with Juliet reimagined as a persecuted Jew and Romeo as a member of the Hitler Youth, has become embroiled over its failure to include Jewish people in a casting call. The company advertised for non-binary artists and/or those of global majority, Black or Asian heritage to join the cast. The call did not include any request for Jewish performers to join the cast of the production, set in the Third Reich, and the company has publicly apologized for the omission. Please accept our profound apologies for...
I mean, it is a little bit strange. Let's see, what do we got here? Non-binary, those that have been targeted. Black or Asian heritage would have been targeted, but not as much, because Germany.
The company has publicly apologized for the omission. Please accept our profound apologies for neglecting to mention the performers of Jewish background are preferred for the Capulets. This was the initial intention. The director is Jewish, and our intention has always been to include this casting preference. My god, doesn't that sound like an amazing show? I'd love to go see that nonsense. Romeo as a non-binary member of the Hitler Youth. Juliet's probably a black Jewish lesbian in a wheelchair, white-facing as Anne Frank. Incredible. But my curiosity was drawn to one specific passage. One word, actually. The company advertised for non-binary artists and/or those of global majority, Black or Asian heritage. Global majority? This is the first time I'd ever heard the term, but it's pretty obvious what it means, right? In white majority countries, Black people or Asian people are a racial minority, and we use that term minority to refer to them. But on a global scale, there's clearly more Black and Asian people than there are white people, making them the global majority.
Well, hang on. No, I'm actually not familiar with that term either. But look, global majority, comma, Black or Asian heritage. This implies that global majority is distinct from Black or Asian. Let's Google that term. I actually don't know what that means. Let's see. Global majority meaning. Global majority is a collective term for ethnic groups which constitute approximately 85% of the global population. It has been used as an alternative to terms which are seen as racialized, like ethnic minority and person of color, or more regional terms like visible minority in Canada, Black, Asian, and minority ethnic in the United Kingdom. So that would include, for example, like Indigenous Canadians, Australians, Indigenous Americans, or Maori, stuff like that.
Binary artists and/or are a racial minority, and we use that term minority to refer to them. But on a global scale, there's clearly more Black and Asian people than there are white people, making them the global majority. It's a pretty intuitive term, but where did it come from? And why is there a switch from language about minorities to the majority? When people think about minorities, they often think in broad terms left-wing politics. Your average progressive draws moral legitimacy by appealing to the rights of or the protection of various minority groups. Racial or ethnic minorities, sexual or gender minorities, religious minorities, people with various disabilities, even if they're wildly different, are often called upon as if they're a minority. The idea is that the majority culture is always going to be inherently oppressive towards these minorities. An obvious example is
that's not the exception. No, they're minorities because they're a numerical minority, one, and B, they're also treated as essentially minors by the state. What global majority does, which is why it offends Surefire Otaku, is it displaces the schlub like him as being the main character. That's about it. I don't know why you're doing this like weird psychoanalysis of an article whose terminology you're barely familiar with.
Majority Christian society, the state, the social institutions, and the general culture is going to broadly be pro-Christian, and may actively discriminate against or suppress non-Christians, maybe with state force, maybe with differing rules for interacting with social institutions, maybe with cultural exclusion. But even if that society did not actually do any of those things, there's always going to be a base level of background radiation style discrimination. The best example I can think of right now is from another Weekly Sip article, where that Muslim mother decried society being so Christmas-oriented during December, and how hard it was to shield her children from the influence of the overarching culture she was living in the West. From her point of view, even though nobody's actually...
Well, the overarching culture you're living in the West, quote-unquote, and I think she probably means in the UK, is a secular government that is not supposed to be generally imposing tenuous religious norms and practices on an unwilling population, which saturating the public environment, first of all, in a way that's a slap in the face to the actual like ethics, if you take them seriously, of Christian religion in the first place. But leaving that aside, Muslims don't regard the birth of Christ as the birth of God. You are forcing somebody in a situation where, well, here's the thing, right? If there was a saturation in public spaces of Muslim, Islamic religious paraphernalia and phrasings and decorations, etc., if it found its way into like public speeches and things like that, more so than Christian religion, I would bet that Short Fat Otaku, as well as a lot of people like him, would take deep offense. Because they're the main characters. It's the West, after all. Doesn't matter that it's completely contrary to its secular liberal values, where the magistrate is not supposed to be insisting upon things about which it has no authority, namely the appropriateness of some religious belief or practice over others. That's basically it.
Overarching culture she was living in the West. From her point of view, even though nobody's actually oppressing her, nobody's excluding her from Christmas, and nobody's preventing her from opting out of Christmas and celebrating her own holidays.
Except for the fact that if she walks down the street, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And you would, I'm almost certain I could find something on his channel to this effect. We'll have to take a look. Let's say it was like, let's say a satanic holiday had the exact same type of representation as Christmas ornamentation does. He'd probably, like, look at the background here. List of evil words and concepts. Christian morality, the West.
The fact that she lives in a culture where Christmas is celebrated means she feels othered every time she steps outside. In effect, from her point of view, the norm...
No, not she feels othered every time she steps outside. You're assuming that. Maybe it's not that she feels othered every time she steps outside. Maybe she is having something that is viscerally offensive to her on a moral and intellectual level, being shoved in her face everywhere she goes. And as a citizen of a secular state, she should not have to be dealing with that. White Christians are deeply offended at the existence of Muslim institutions or Muslim iconography or cultural artifacts or decoration or whatever, in a public setting and will whinge about it endlessly. Remember the Ground Zero Mosque thing? Like, there's a cultural center in the same city as the Twin Towers. Oh my God, it's a victory lap by the barbarian hordes. That was the attitude. It's insane. Never mind the fact that on the desecrated, stolen territory of untold numbers of tribes, because many of them are just lost, we have far more overt religious and cultural displays being paraded about in that same country. Just doesn't...
Normal polite goings-on of a culture she lives in, but is not part of, feels exclusionary to her. And a Christian who happened to be in the Middle East during Ramadan or something would likely feel the same way. Even if he was left alone to not participate, there would still be that feeling of being a stranger in a strange land. The implication here is that
colonialism doesn't exist, and that despite the fact that Christianity originates in the Middle East as well, there's absolutely nothing peculiar about the fact that we just assume that it's the default in the UK and in Canada and the United States. Why on earth should that be the case, though? There were also other religions there too that were also stamped over. This is just massively presumptuous. It's the most insidious form of main character syndrome in human history.
Progressive society should understand that any majority is always going to be inherently oppressive towards minorities, no matter what people do. And therefore, in order to be good and moral, we should give their needs extra consideration. This is the foundation for programs like affirmative action in schools or in hiring.
No. The foundation for affirmative action in schools is that you enslaved and abused a large part of the population. That's had intergenerational effects. And so it's not fair to just assume that every single person who inherits that history is just starting from go in the exact same way that other people who don't. Like, it's a game of Monopoly. That's why affirmative action is there. It's not because of an assumption that the dominant culture must be oppressive. It's actually an attempt, corrupt and broken for various reasons, but an attempt by people to use the dominant institutions to correct bad things that they've done in very recent history. Lest we forget, it's been less than 100 years since black people attained the vote. Like, it's... Let me find some other numbers here. Suffrage for women, when was that? That was in the 20s, right? Let's see. Suffrage for women attained... 1920 with the passing of the 19th Amendment. You're right. That's the earliest version. Let's see here quickly. Yeah, nationally in 1920. Oh, so exactly in 1920. There you go. In recent history, World War II, America and Canada just robbed Japanese locals of their belongings. We only just recently returned a tea house that was just stolen from a Japanese family of Canadians. Like, it's horrific. We just recently started digging up the bodies of kidnapped children, buried under residential schools. And here's the thing about residential schools, right? You can argue till the cows come home about whether or not the conditions were like racially slanted, because there were white kids in residential schools too. Were they treated worse? Did they die because of abuse or because of tuberculosis? Set that aside. The reason why we don't have the reason why it was a discovery that those children were buried there is it doesn't matter how they died. They were there because they were kidnapped. The government sent around people to scoop up the kids and send them to the schools. They were found there as a surprise because there was no record given to the parents showing them where their children went. They just disappeared. That's in recent history. Very recent history. Imagine you're just kidnapped by the government. You're sent to an impoverished school by a arrogant religious zealot who's been tasked to stamp out your culture, to just destroy your connection to your parents and to the society that you were raised out of. And then you're just thrust back into the world afterwards, assuming you survived. A lot of them didn't, but assuming you survived. Or maybe you lost siblings, right? Or you were separated from siblings. You just lost basically everything. And then you're just shoved back into the world. You're going to have problems. You're going to have a lot of real psychological and material problems. And those are going to be manifest in, if you have children, how you are able to raise them, how you relate to them, how you relate to the outside world, how that causes, how that affects you and your children's attitude going forward. That'll affect their children's raising, etc., etc., etc. And it's very easy for there to be like very serious problems and disadvantages that accrue from that. You have a lot of anxiety, you have a lot of stress, you have a lot of abuse, Recent. This is all super recent. Most of these people who suffer the initial event, not most of them, but a lot of the people who suffer from the initial earliest events are alive. Not the earliest events like in the case of slavery and whatnot, but like with these other things, like, shall we say, people were alive. People are still alive who lived at the tail end of the worst of these things, just existing without us being on like a trajectory out from, right? That was awkwardly phrased, but I think you get the idea.
Practices, or public representation in entertainment, or providing them a special seat in government or corporate functions to ensure that their unique viewpoint has a chance to be heard and considered by the majority. Regardless of whether any of this is good or bad, factual or fake, it doesn't matter. This is what we think of when we think of the word minority in the Western world. And so the question is, why is the left slowly giving up that entire school of thought, this entire foundation of moral legitimacy, by switching rhetoric over from minorities to the global majority?
This is what happens when your research consists of basically just onboarding what Sargon of Akkad tells you and then just using that as your baseline. But Sargon of Akkad says the left is doing this, but they're saying this thing, and that doesn't seem to jive with this thing that Sargon of Akkad said. What's going on? They're obviously degenerating. Their moral depravity is just leading them down a dark, twisted path. They were hypocrites all along. Like that's what this amounts to. Anyways, you get the idea. So this is going to be one we're going to respond to, because it will be easy and it will be fun because he's stupid. So moral legitimacy of the minority, the pronoun problem, obviously. Three forms of fascism, that will be interesting. Okay, so let's see. 3 forms of fascism, that'll be good. 20 minutes long, that was actually going to be an interesting one to reply to. Moral majority, or moral legitimacy of the minority. Pronoun problem, that's 3. Let's get 2 more. Let's get 2 more. After the revolution, what's this?
Wishful thinking after the revolution. And examining this idea shows us exactly what kind of people we're dealing with when we talk about, very broadly, leftist revolutionaries. This is the earliest instance I can find of this phenomenon. This is from 2017 on Twitter. Y'all ever think about what your roles will be post-revolution? The first person, Groucho Marx, says, I hope to be a therapist, maybe for general trauma, but maybe re-educating the antisocial tendencies out of people in a gulag. Quest Riggs says, this is a great thread. Red Army or the party if they'd take me.
It's a joke. Anyways. Institutions are deontological. Because... How? Institutions are deontological? Why do you think consequentialists attack them so much when they loot? What? Deontological has basically 2 meanings. It was coined, I believe, by Jeremy Bentham, and it simply meant that which you arrived at through judgment and was therefore needful. I believe etymologically it just means that which is necessary. When we talk about Kant's morality being deontological, or being described as deontological, which I believe it only started to be in the 1930s, it is described as such because it's necessary. It is always necessary. It comes down from on high like a laser. This is something that is necessary irrespective of conditions. It is an imperative. I mean, institutions can be deontological in the first sense. We can arrive at the need for them intellectually through our judgment. So I guess that's sort of there as a stretch. But he's not talking about it in that key clearly, because in the description he says, "Why do you think consequentialists attack them so much when they lose?" So he clearly means in the Kantian sense, which doesn't make sense because that's not.
This video is kind of a follow-up to a previous video called Consent is Deontological. Here's the TLDR. Consequentialist ethics are basically good is good ends. Deontological ethics are basically good is good rules. The problem with deontology is that it's not hard to find a situation where a corrupt set of rules causes evil, hence the idea of the pious churchgoer hurting others in the name of God. The problem with consequentialism is it's very easy to justify any sort of evil as long as it's
No, the problem with deontology is that, first of all, it's extremely difficult to establish because almost every single argument you're going to be used is going to be predicated on something that's contingent. This is one of the reasons why Kant's categorical imperative is often characterized as being impoverished, because it is, because the moral qua the moral is that which is not conditioned by anything in the world, so it even exceeds the human. This makes them very inconvenient. In fact, one of the easiest ways to tell, or at least maybe not one of the easiest ways to tell, but maybe one of the conditions of something being motivated purely morally, is that it has no positive practical benefit at all. Like if everything crumbles and dies, but you maintain the course. That's like Rorschach in Watchmen.
theorized outcome is good, hence the phrase ends justify the means. And in the video, I describe how the concept of consent operates on deontological ethics. The basic idea is, when you give your consent to another person, what you're actually doing is outlining a set of rules, almost always informal and unwritten ones, but rules nonetheless, that you agree to abide by. And this works not only for sexual consent, but all types of consent. Let's say I tell you I'll meet you at the pub at 7 p.m. That is a rule. I give you my word. I will be at a place and time. And if
that's not a rule, it's just a statement. A statement's not a rule.
I breach it, I will have failed morally. In some small way, given that example, but it's still a failure. If I arrive at 7:15, you're justified in being a little annoyed.
What do you mean? Why have you failed morally? What does that mean? What does moral mean in this context?
At me. Even if you are also late, then we're both a little bit at fault. Let's say that you're late because your car got hit on the way over, and I'm late because I'm a little bit lazy. Even though the outcome is the same, that we're both late, one of us has a greater moral culpability because it's not only outcomes that matter, but intentions as well. That's why I made the point in that video that fundamentally socialists don't care about consent, and not simply because the socialist community, colloquially, seems to contain more sex pests on average.
Yeah, that aged well, didn't it? All right. And this one, absolutely. And we'll fold that one in with the consent is deontological as well. That's going to be a dumpster fire. Ah, the last one, we found it. The nature of progress. We have to. Classical fascists aren't reactionaries, and neither are people who have a different vision of progress than the left. All right, better be impressive.
I made a video a couple years ago called What is a Reactionary? Examining the meaning of the word. The political meaning, not the general one, which is literally just somebody who reacts to stuff. The description of that video reads, "Revolution seems to be a privilege only afforded to the left, but the reality is, progress does not simply go in one political direction." I was on the right track, but there were still a few things I didn't understand. To begin with, the political definition of reactionary is a person or a set of views opposing political or social liberalization or reform. Or alternatively, a person who holds political views that favor a return to the status quo ante, the previous political state of society, which that person believes possessed positive characteristics absent from contemporary society. An easy joke to make uses the first definition of the word. Since that definition points toward political or social liberalization, moving away from liberalism or being somehow anti-liberal means that you're a reactionary, which makes socialists reactionary.
No, you fucking moron. It's because in present day, social liberalization is the norm. The liberal state is hegemonic. Which is why liberalization is specified. Also, because in recent history, we had essentially a liberal revolution in the context of the French Revolution. Reactionaries as a category basically emerged in response to general liberalization, in response to a flattening of the people into the category citizen, and a reorientation of society so it's validated on the basis of the consent of the governed. That's why. Okay. And this one. All right. We now know what's going to give me an aneurysm over the next couple of weeks. That's all, folks. Have a good night. Take care. And if you appreciate what I do, I have a Patreon. That keeps me alive. Just throwing that out there. Take care. Have a good night.